Hey everybody, before we start this episode of the MinnMax Show podcast, I wanted to bring up something very important. I'm talking about the Nintendo Switch Pro Controller. You probably own one, you probably love one, but don't you want to play with it more when you're playing handheld Switch? Well, the folks at Fixture Gaming have you covered with the Fixture S1. Look at this sucker. It's a clip that you just clip onto your Switch Pro Controller and then slide the screen in on top of that in a very comfortable way, very ergonomic way. You can keep playing with the Pro Controller on the go with the Fixture S1. And they're so confident and so generous, they're giving away a Fixture S1 randomly to somebody who watches and shares this episode of the MinnMax Show podcast. So if you share this episode of the podcast on Twitter and use the hashtag MinnMaxFixture, use that hashtag while you share this episode of the podcast, you can win a Fixture S1 with the custom MinnMax logo on it. So thanks so much to the fine folks at Fixture. You can go to their official site and use the promo code MinnMax there for $5 off the Fixture S1 if you want to play comfortably on the go with the Nintendo Switch. Okay, on with the show. Hello everybody and welcome to the MinnMax Show, a place about games, friends, and getting better. My name is Ben Hansen and I'm joined by Kyle Hilliard.
Hello.
And Leo Vader's here too.
Thank you.
But that's not all. We also have Janet Garcia from California.
Hey, what's up?
All the way from beautiful California. Welcome, Janet. How you doing?
I'm good. You know, it's warm out here. It's nice.
We have a big episode of the podcast. We are talking about EA Play 2021. Not quite E3, but it's like a dash of E3 coming back in late July, of course. Thanks to EA, we got some fun news coming out of that. Then we're going to be talking a little bit about Death's Door. Leo's going to regale us with the saga of a video game that he, what's the right way to phrase it, Leo? How do we put your experience here?
Really liked.
Okay, great. We'll get into that.
That's a hell of a pitch.
Then Kyle and I will be talking about Aliens Fireteam Elite a little bit more, some odds and ends. Then back half of the show, of course, we have some great community questions that people submitted over on Patreon. So thanks everybody for submitting such wonderful questions along the way. EA Play 2021. Did you manage to watch it, Kyle?
I did, yeah. I had it up in the background while I was doing some work and stuff. Saw our good pal Andy Mack kicking it off, and yeah. The end was very exciting, the last 5 minutes.
So it was interesting. Yeah, so they had the pre-show, and they had our former boss from Game Informer, Andy McNamara, co-hosting the big pre-show. He did a great job. That is a tough gig. That is tough. It's very easy to just rail against all presenters, but to sit there and try and be calm when clearly everyone's very nervous, and to try and be lighthearted. I don't know, Janet, do you think you could do that? Could you handle like E3 presenter style?
I think I could, but I know I'd be horrified. Like there are a couple things that I do that still get me really nervous, like usually hosting stuff, like anything where it's like not like here where it's like I'm just here and you'll ask me something and then I'll answer. It's gonna be pretty easy. But like having to be the person driving, it's horrifying. So a short answer, yes. Long answer, I'd be scared. And then side answer, watching it now that I've been in the industry for like a bit longer, I just can't stop thinking about like the meta of the presentation. Like I was watching the stream and I'm like, oh man, this is really intense. Okay, good delivery, good, clear, calm, nice nice cadence. Okay,
you become more sympathetic,
not too energetic. It's just like it takes a real talent to do that well.
And especially when I'm up in my head about like seeing somebody like Andy on there, it's like, I know Andy pretty well at this point. I worked with him for a very long time. I know he hates being on camera and hates seeing himself on camera. So just that idea of like him in this primetime slot, it's like, oh God, please go well. And then lo and behold, it did. During the pre-show, they ran through a couple things. They showed off Lost in Random, which is that platformer that looks a little bit like Psychonauts 2, and it has a card system which is trying to mash together Leo's favorite thing, which is dealing with cards, and his least favorite thing, which is joyful 3D platformers, to see if he's coming over to the side. But is that working for you, Leo?
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if they can scam me, trick me into playing it.
All right, cool. But we should probably get to the big thing from this EA Play right out of the gate. Kyle, What happened at the end? Tell us the saga.
Xavier Woods walked in. Well, actually, he didn't walk into a dark room. He told us, the viewer, to walk into a dark room. And there was a lovely, horrifying tease for the remake of Dead Space for PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X exclusively.
Well, PC as well.
Yeah. It's Dead Space, man. It's freaking exciting.
It is fantastic. Yeah. So it's also coming to PC, but I think that was probably my big takeaway. Very, very light tease here overall. But just that idea that, visually, I don't think I was fully expecting it to look this good. And even just from like the very light teaser, I was blown away by how good it looked. And then that big slam at the end of letting everybody know that this is going to be next gen only, that alone doubled my excitement. I was like, I didn't even thought about that idea of them really pushing how good this thing can look. But very light teaser. Like, Janet, were you interested in what they showed, or is it more still the concept of what they're building is exciting?
I mean, yeah, I'm definitely interested. I mean, I think this is perfect. I mean, it's perfect for a lot of people. If you love it and want a reason to go back, there you go. And if you're like me and you really like missed it the first time around, I'm like, now I don't have to go play the older versions. I can play this and kind of have this kind of be my definitive experience of it, and kind of, re-experience it with everybody. Because I think that's one of the drawbacks of missing games, right? Like, a lot of people will be like, you got to go back and play such and such. And that has a lot of its own value, but it is kind of, and people do get excited when you play like their old favorite games, if you like tweet about them and stuff. But it's nice because now there'll be like a shared conversation that I can get back into despite having missed it all those years ago. So definitely excited. Kind of wish there was a bit more there. Like, I had to look it up after. I'm like, okay, is this a remake or remaster? Like, what do we know? And I kind of wish there was a bit more, but I love that it was one more thing also. I love the one more thing.
It was a nice way to close everything out. And obviously the big debate rages on in the game industry about like, I wish we didn't know about this. I wish Jeff Grubb in particular hadn't really gotten out there and sent the flares up saying this is going to be happening, because it does. I'm still, of two minds about that whole debate, but it is interesting just watching the chat during an EA play where they're trying to talk about Grid Legends, the new Codemasters game and stuff like that, and the chat's just lighting up like, talk about Dead Space or get the hell out of here, whereas before it would have been a nice surprise, but still.
But how many more people did they have watching that presentation because they knew Dead Space was going to be in it?
That's true. Yeah, that's probably a significant amount. Yeah, because everybody could run those stories about Dead Space and then say, by the way, they'll be revealing it at EA Play Live, which is a weird thing to say. Play. That's right.
I mean, genuinely, there's a lot of EA games I like, but just like their slate for the upcoming year, I'm not a big Battlefield guy. I'm not playing Apex Legends. I probably would have skipped it if there hadn't been that sort of like, those rumors going around of Dead Space, because Dead Space is like miles and miles and far away, easily my favorite thing EA has ever done, period. Like, there's no contest. There's no like second place for me. Specifically, even I would even go to hone it down even more. I would say Dead Space 2 is the best game EA has ever published, period.
Oof. All right. Hot takes. We'll be unpacking it because we're doing.
I don't know if it's that hot, but it is a take.
No, I think it's interesting.
Out. Just you wait and see.
Yeah. I mean, it does. I think EA has had a really good year so far this year. Like, it's a nice reminder of the game industry. It doesn't take that many releases to kind of turn around perception. I think just that idea of Mass Effect Legendary Edition, Knockout City.
Oh yeah, Mass Effect. That's what everyone's going to be mad at me about.
Yeah, they're going to be
Dead
furious.
Space is better than Mass Effect.
But then also,
I stand by it.
But then also, like, It Takes Two, like that trifecta just in 2021 is kind of like, oh, hey, EA, look at this. And then bringing back this fan favorite Dead Space, even though this is still a really long way away. I mean, EA Motive is developing it. It seems like their last project, Project Atlas, which was their new IP they've been trying to build. I mean, that's the reason EA Motive was founded, was to create new IP. And that project was killed, last year? They just released Star Wars Squadrons last year. So this is like a BioWare-esque tease of don't expect this for years and years and years, most likely.
Well, since we know it is a remake somewhat along the lines of RE2 remake, which was very much RE2, but also its own thing.
Yeah.
Are you hoping they make any changes? Are you hoping this is a secret lead-in to like a new set of Dead Space games? Or do you hope it's the exact thing and then it does well and then they remake the next one exactly?
I hope they play it safe, which is normally not the camp I'm in, but I hope that it is more faithful to the original than maybe you would even expect. I think Resident Evil 2, this is what Jeff Grubb reported, dear friend of the show, said that it was kind of, that's the way they were talking about it internally, is tweaking some things. And I think that's a good way to go. Like, keep it that shorter experience, that 10-hour single player focused experience. But even in, they had an interview on IGN, and the producer and creative director talked a little bit about it there. And they said that they're going back to like some of the original designs for Dead Space 1 about like, okay, it seems like they wanted to do this. This was in the concept art. That wasn't in there. We can make that happen. But then also they're taking some ideas and like story elements from Dead Space 2 and 3 to try and like seed things better and connect things better. And then there's smaller things like zero-G controls and stuff. They're bringing those in from Dead Space 2 into Dead Space 1. So there are those level of tweaks apparently.
Well, they did. This announcement is funny because it very much was one where it was like there actually is a decent amount of information beyond the teaser, because like you could watch that teaser and not even be certain it's a remake.
Right.
Like the main thing for me was like we're doing the deepest dive. I played the first hour or so of Dead Space last night. Cut off their limbs is like a very specific moment, and like the fact that was wholesale placed here was more of an indicator that it was a remake than anything else to me. But like you wouldn't really necessarily remember that if I hadn't just played it last night.
Right.
But some of the things I saw were like, it is they said, it's funny, they phrased it like we're updating the story too. And yeah, like there are elements of the way Dead Space 2 plays that I would love to see brought into 1. Like just the way, what is it called? The zero-G stuff where you can lift stuff up and throw it was like vastly improved in Dead Space 2. Way more fun in Dead Space 2. And like it's very limited, perhaps unnecessarily, in Dead Space 1. So I actually encourage them to kind of tweak and like, change the story and see things for the future. I wouldn't mind if it's not very faithful, because Dead Space 1, which we'll talk about in depth soon, still holds up really well and is not a game that I would have said is in need of a remake, honestly.
Yeah.
It's kind of just hard for me to picture them remaking 3 games in a row like relatively accurate to what they were. Like the idea of them changing more for this makes it more likely that the Dead Space is a real brand for them going forward. The way that Resident Evil remakes are like part of keeping that brand alive and relevant for having actual new games.
Yeah, that is interesting to think about. I think you're probably right in that this will be kind of the safe bet, not exactly testing the waters, but at least let's just establish things, make fans happy. But the idea of doing 3 is going to be a bit much. And so then whatever their equivalent of Dead Space 2 will be a little bit more of them experimenting and trying to rework things from the ground up even further than they're doing here.
Maybe that's where the big twist is at the end of 2, and it leads into a different 3, since that was more critically divisive.
Smart.
That'd be interesting.
I mean, I wouldn't mind this remake, right, being like a remake of Dead Space 1, and then whatever's next, like rather than remake Dead Space 2, a game that I have established that I love very dearly, like then that's kind of where Dead Space 4 comes to exist. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like Dead Space 1 is like just gives you a taste of the world so that it can bring in new people like Janet and, satisfy people like me who love the original. Janet. And then they can be like, okay, now we're doing something new protagonists, we're going somewhere different in this universe, and that would be amazing. I'd totally be for that.
But then would they be seeding those story elements from 2 and 3, which in the IGN interview they say that they're doing, if they weren't going to be following through on that? Or would their equivalent of Dead Space 4 kind of just not literally be a Dead Space 4, but whatever their Dead Space Awakening is, or whatever the hell they call the successor?
Legends.
Yes, of course. Then they would just pull in story elements from 2 and 3. Yeah, it's an interesting saga, but
who knows?
Yeah, tip of the cap for EA for actually doing this, and that new team and within EA Motive, which like the creative director and producer come from Ubisoft. Like the creative director was the director of For Honor, which is a bizarre transition over here. But they say in that IGN interview, we want to make that immersion even deeper with a fully interactive experience from the start screen to the end credits. We don't want anything to pull you out of the experience, and we don't want any cuts. So they're taking the old God of War track here.
No. They're taking their original idea that God of War capitalized on.
Well, hang on. Are there cutscenes in the original Dead Space?
There's maybe like one all honest to God cut in Dead Space 1. It is all very much meant to be a single cut.
Really? Okay.
Dead Space 1? Aren't there loading screens on the tram?
Oh, you know what? Now I'm second guessing myself. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm mixing up 2. 2 is the one that really it pulls it off in an impressive way. But yeah, I mean, but the joke that I'm making still stands is that like they kind of did it first, but they just didn't use it as a marketing pillar.
Right. Although I will say in Dead Space 2, that was the case except on PlayStation 3 where you would save your game and it would pop up that big ugly PS3 select your save slot UI. That still happens in like Last of Us Remastered and stuff. Like I really hope they avoid doing that on the PS5 version.
That's a bummer.
But I think it's exciting. That idea of, okay, yeah, it seems like the game is built for that, like having the health on Isaac Clarke's back and all that stuff in a way that God of War really didn't work for that. Like originally, I remember I visited Sony Santa Monica for the God of War cover story trip back at Game Informer and talked to them about that idea of the no-cut camera, of course, and how originally they wanted like all the UI and stuff to also be no-cut. Like if you were upgrading your axe, the camera would transition and zoom in on the axe and you actually see Kratos' hand like upgrading the things there. And eventually it's like, well, we just needed a pause screen because there's too much going on here. Yeah. But maybe the design simplicity of Dead Space will work a lot better with that idea.
Dead Space pulled that off already.
Yeah.
Everything is in universe. When you upgrade yourself, it never cuts away. When you go into your inventory, it's all in universe. It's a holographic display that pops up in front of you. Like, I think Leo's right. I think there might be loading screens for the subway tram or whatever.
Yeah.
But otherwise, you never leave that world unless you press the pause button.
And so that's why it's exciting for them to be on new gen only, to, in theory, be using the SSDs to not have any loading for the big remake / reboot of Dead Space here. But very exciting. Like they're saying all the right things. They know their messaging. So they said like, hey, we have a community council. We're checking out everything by them. They're telling us where we're going wrong. We're not having microtransactions. They're trying to like get all the messaging out there that this seems like a fan dream project. So it's exciting. And as Kyle alluded to a couple times, we are doing the deepest dive on Dead Space 1. So if you want to go back and play that original game along with us and along with the MinnMax community, you can go to patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's to submit a comment on the game's first half. In this first discussion, we're covering the game's first 6 chapters. And that is going to be on Monday, July 26th is when we'll be looking for your comments that we'll read on air for our big group discussion. Should be a good time. And then we'll be doing the second half of the game the week after that. But if you go support us on Patreon, you can unlock the podcast version of that huge game club discussion for Dead Space because it's available on Game Pass, Steam, good old games on sale right now for $5, PS3. You can play any which way, but it's a good time to go back and check out Dead Space.
Mentioning DLC for Dead Space not being a thing, I hope they just make it integrated then because there was a steampunk gun that you could get for 80 Microsoft points on the original Dead Space.
Really?
I'm reading now, so hopefully they honor that.
There was a armor, I guess they call it armor in the game, that you could get where you were like legally distinct but very close to a stormtrooper. I think that might have been paid.
Really?
EA could do that better now. More easily.
Even better. It'll be interesting to see how this game is marketed and rolled out along with Callisto Protocol, which is that game that's technically in the PUBG universe from Glenn Schofield's new studio. And he was, obviously a huge part of that original Dead Space as well. So now there's going to be the Dead Space spiritual successor and the remake of Dead Space, like competing for that territory. But it'll be fun to see how they interact. Marketing wise.
We all win.
We all
more horror.
Win.
Stuff going wrong in space is scary. Give me more of those.
That's right. Oh man, where do we go next? Kyle, we should talk about... What's that, Leo?
The world's our oyster. We could go anywhere.
It's honestly true. That is literally true. But just to keep it thematically consistent, Kyle, we should talk a little bit about Aliens Fireteam Elite.
Why would you think they're thematically consistent?
I can't think of any reason. But this is the Left 4 Dead-like game, the co-op experience in the Aliens universe. Kyle and I got to check out a preview build. Cold Iron Studios sent a code over, so we got to play as a little trifecta because it's 3-person units, the future of all co-op. And we only played a bit, so not very thorough impressions here, but Kyle, I'll give my take, and you tell me where I'm wrong. Surprisingly solid. Better than I thought. And your take is?
I agree with you. Although my one counter, I guess I would remove the surprisingly, because like I was like super on board when they first showed it, and I thought it looked pretty cool. Like the premise is good. Like it was one of those things where like it got announced, it was like, of course there should be a Left 4 Dead style game where you're fighting xenomorphs. Like why doesn't this exist already? And like those are cool aliens to fight in a scary setting with teammates. So and the Left 4 Dead inspired games do have that scary problem, you know, not in world, but where they are in danger of being non-functional because they are very complicated games. But I think our experience was solid. Like, I don't think we really had a lot of technical issues, really. I don't remember anything standing out.
No, it's still a preview build and all that fun stuff. But yeah, it seemed good. It's the idea of, aliens, xenomorphs, those are perfect for fighting in this style game. The one catch is like the silhouettes all a little bit similar. Something like Left 4 Dead or those style games are so clear for like, okay, this style enemy. But we had a lot of the situations like, okay, you're killing a lot of xenomorphs, and then you'd have that moment of, oh, okay, this is a xenomorph warrior. It's kind of like a xenomorph, but he's standing up 20% more than the other type of xenomorph, so we need to be careful of this one. But they also have like, you know, these pop with extra acid, so they're going to be glowing green. So they're doing everything they can to try and differentiate it without just having every type of species of fusion of the xenomorph in there. But Leo, are you intrigued by this thing?
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if that has to do with just struggles with the license of like not being able to go too far off model for a xenomorph. That's interesting. But I'm always interested in a Left 4 Dead type of thing if my friends get into it first and beg me to get it. Yeah,
that's definitely going to be the big thing with this game. And it's coming out August 24th. And I hate to catch this refrain. I feel like, Janet, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like this is becoming the new, this should come on Switch. But like, this is a game where it's like, if this was on Game Pass, I feel like it would really mop up. It could really use that Game Pass boost. They haven't announced it yet, but who knows when third parties see that line and do the math and realize like, yep, let's throw it into that bucket.
I hope more games at least do the thing where it's like, has like a free trial, like a 10-day. Like we kind of saw that with Knockout City, where it kind of allowed you to get into it for a bit.
Right.
Just to see if you like it, because I do think it is that thing where if you and your friends don't like it, like I've heard so many stories of people being like, I really like this one multiplayer game, but no one else did, so I just can't play it. So I do think I'd like to see that be a little bit more of a wave for games like this. I think it is to everyone's benefit.
Yeah, for sure, because I think it's a tall order to be like, okay, everybody, you just got to convince two of your friends to play this co-op game. Meanwhile, there's so many Left 4 Dead likes that are already on Game Pass or available for cheaper elsewhere. I mean, Left 4 Dead itself is probably $2.99 on Steam now. You can play it in handheld like everyone's been dreaming about for so many years with the Steam Deck now.
I think that license will carry it a little further than most.
You're right.
Though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know, just seeing, like, you could just see some gameplay and just like, you know, it is it is completely that scene from Aliens 2 with the radar. Like, that's the game. Like, who wouldn't want to play that, you know?
Yeah, we did have a moment of playing it, of being like, oh God, they're coming from behind. All right. And it's like, oh, that's right. We should be checking the radar. Like the signature thing from Aliens, we should absolutely be doing in this third person game. Yeah. But yeah, we had a good time with it. Like, there's the weird stuff where they have emotes, they have like dances you can unlock and stuff like that, but we didn't find anything too shattering from our experience. But they have like a hub area, kind of like a Deep Rock Galactic, where you're running around. It seems like they're trying to build up the personalities a little bit of some of those characters there, and they're trying to seed, you know, a little bit of story into each of these missions. Like, oh, you got to go rescue the doctor to get down this way. But Kyle, was that intriguing to you at all? Like the atmospheric story, is it just, I just kind of want to shoot a bunch of xenomorphs here?
I mean, I think it could be. It's something I would like to see in the game, but in like a beta situation where it's like I'm fully focused on just seeing how it feels and plays.
Yeah.
Like I'm not. It's tough to even talk about it for me from the story perspective from there, because it's like I literally don't want to know the story when I'm playing the beta, because it's going to be different by the time the game comes out, and it's like I don't want to get invested in any way into anything that's happening, because it's going to be months before I can see it to resolution, you know?
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, August 24th is when that's coming out, but better than I was expecting. Seems solid if you're looking for that Left 4 Dead Aliens like experience.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see how it lands.
Classes, like there's not a lot of classes in these types of games. I mean, I think there's some have experimented with, you know, you can each take a different gun, but this, you know, like you were playing the medic, I was What was I? I was the demolitionist or something.
Demolisher, the gunner, the
chain gun.
tech, and the doc. Yeah, kind of the four biggies out of the gate. And yeah, the doc took some getting used to. I feel like I wasn't helping as much as I could because I used my medic stuff once, and it takes a while before you get another one to pop out there. But we did it. We beat a mission, Kyle.
We did.
We
saved the day.
Thank you. Leo, do you want to talk about Battlefield 2042?
Oh, sure.
Okay. So this was at the EA Play thing. They've been slowly trickling out more and more. And the big star of the show this time around is Battlefield 2042's Portal mode, Kyle. It's called Portal.
EA did publish the orange box on PlayStation 3. Does this all come together here?
I think it's probably connected in some way. Yeah. But Leo, could you describe what we were looking at with this Portal mode?
All your favorite maps from the last 5 Battlefield games.
Yeah.
All your favorite armies. Mix and match them, baby. Make them go defibrillator only versus knives only. Weird crap like that.
It's so
one team's all bomb disposal robots or whatever. That's pretty funky.
Totally. Okay, so it's that's the best way to put it. It's a funky, playful mode in Battlefield called Portal, confusingly, where they're mashing together a bunch of different eras of Battlefield. They're going to be adding more games along the way. It's like, okay, you have 1942 style weapons and soldiers, and they're going to be battling with 2042. Then we got some Battlefield 5 in there. Not Battlefield 5, Battlefield 3 is going to be in there. So it's basically just an endless box for them to throw in more Battlefield toys, but not in a battle royale style way, which is interesting. It's fun to have something this wacky and silly, but not
and player created if that's not clear.
Right.
They give you the tools and the player makes the modes. And it seems more along the lines of Overwatch's custom content than anything.
Right. But still, it blew my mind that they actually have a logic editor.
Yeah.
It seemed surprisingly complex, but they made clear it's not a level editor. It seems like it's south of a Halo Forge, but still somewhere in that arena. Just if you want some good, silly Battlefield experiences, this might be a good way to go. And I'm intrigued. I think it's a really cool idea just to get silly.
It adds a lot of value to a $70 multiplayer only game to have that kind of a area for infinite content.
Yeah, for sure. Jan, I think there's any chance you're going to get into Battlefield 2042?
I mean, the chances are always pretty low because it's an intensive shooty shoots game. I was talking about on my stream, I'm I don't really do the shooty shoots. So, this probably not. Everyone's like, do you play Apex? And I'm like, nope, and I'm just kind of here hanging out. But then in the same vein, I was looking up highly rated games from this year, at the end of the stream. And someone's like, oh, Metro's cool, but you probably wouldn't want to play it because it's a shooty shoot. And I'm like, oh no, I love that game. Metro Exodus was great. So you never know. You never know what goes down. I will say that mode was the most intriguing to me because it just seems like the dumbest thing. Yeah. I really like when games that lean a little bit heavier into the sim elements of their genre. Battlefield definitely being one with the bullet drop and, it has other functionality that makes it a unique shooter. But then it's what if we take all these serious things and then make it hyper dumb? When they shut off the mode of that's basically the military version of can a bunch of ducks defeat a giant horse was sort of what they were leaning into with that tank versus all the little machines. I think that element's pretty cool. I was into the logic element. I liked the recent wave of games providing player autonomy in terms of creation, making your own fun while also providing interesting elements. I think games have really started to or developers have really started to realize that you need both. You can't just have the fun level editor thing. That's why Mario Maker had the campaign sort of thing. Dreams eventually ended up coming out with the campaign, even though they originally said they wouldn't. You see a bunch of different of these iterations. I am curious as to how complex the logic is to pick up, because at quick glance, it's very drag and drop coding. If you've ever done if you've ever taken a coding class as a child, usually, or maybe even I'm sure some adult ones are like this too, because learning if then logic is fundamental to understanding how to code, I think, right? Let me know if I'm wrong.
I think that's correct.
But I used to teach drag and drop coding, and you could do it with kids that could barely even read if it's at a very low level. This kind of looked more high school level, if you're old enough to kind of understand basic stuff, you should be able to kind of parse it out. But I'm curious as to what the tutorialization of that looks like, because since it does have the logic underneath it, it's a little bit more involved in something like a Mario Maker, where it still can be complex, but you're really just putting things in places and clicking, I want you to do this.
Right.
Mario Maker is actually a lot more like a like a child, like a young child's coding thing, even though I can't make levels. I'm not saying it's not hard to make levels.
Right.
I started a level on a plane that I never finished. But I'm excited to see what silly stuff people make. I think it could be really cool. Yeah,
I think it's a really smart way too, just to have people in the community pushing the limits of mixing and matching these things, setting up a custom rule set just for, not to be a Mr. Corporate here, but it's like, getting attention for those types of things, I think is going to be big. If people are sharing clips of like these absurd matchups and scenarios, I feel like that's going to be the best marketing Battlefield could hope for.
I wonder what other developers make too.
Yeah.
It's like for a couple games, they were doing, we are the definitive World War II experience or whatever. And it was still goofy, but it was kind of marketed as, these war stories, this real experience you're getting. And now in this cinematic, they staged a YouTube clip of like launching a tank up into the air and shooting a ship or whatever. Like they're so clearly finally leaning into that aspect of the game, which has always been the most successful part of it, at least from the outside, not being a serious player.
Yeah, they've always done like the celebrating Battlefield moments. Look at these crazy Battlefield moments. But you're right, that's always had a weird disconnect then when there's 3 narrative cinematic trailers and it's all about like, I watched my brother die today. It's like, I don't really know how to read this. So it seems like this is maybe just not having a campaign has kind of stripped out that pretense from the marketing, at least for Battlefield 2042. But yeah, curious to see how it does. And Leo, you said you're getting into Battlefield 5 recently, which is blowing my mind.
It's great. I love it for being such a high player count, which I'm excited for 128 players in Battlefield 2042. That seems insane. The idea that it's, it's not on me. Whichever way this match goes, there's so many people here that there's only so much of impact I can even have on it.
Right.
I can just thrive under lack of accountability on a team. I'm like, you know what?
That's
whatever
huge.
happens, who's to say?
You would have been great. You would have been great on the front lines of World War II.
As long as we had fun, we're all winners, right? That's Battlefield.
Yeah, all three of it fun's fun. That's what I say every match I play.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so you're just running around being the medic and having a blast?
Yeah, and trying to do side things. Like there's always these main battles going on, and that feels amazing. Like having planes crash into the ground right next to you, and using the debris as cover, like crazy, huge feeling crap like that. But also, I'm going to take my squad and we're going to go on this side mission because they've left this objective undefended, and doing something like that seems like a surprisingly big tide turner in this massive battle. Like the little decisions you can make are really fun.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, maybe we can put it in a poll for New Show Plus or something, because it'd be fun to all try to get back into Battlefield 5, give it another chance. Who all has been playing Death's Door here?
I have.
Hands up.
Okay, Leo, I can't see your hand. Are they just up a little bit, or?
They're both straight down.
Oh, okay, cool. Death's Door.
They're like bird wings at his side.
Beautiful.
I'm A-posing right now.
It's like getting the cosplay ready.
Death's Door, we talked about a little bit on, I think during like the E3 awards, we're talking about like the most promising upcoming games, because they showed it a little bit there, and the action looks so solid, and it's out, and people really seem to be enjoying it a lot. So this is an action RPG, is probably the best way to put it. Action adventure game, Zelda-like. Kyle, how would you describe what the hell's going on with Death's Door?
I would almost just call it a straight action game with maybe a little bit of puzzle solving. It actually, the game that it reminds me of a lot, and this is very high praise because I really adore this game, which has made me like Death's Door a lot, is Hyper Light Drifter. Like,
really?
It feels close to that in a weird way, because it's all about like, you have just simple move set of like, you can swipe and you can get out of the way, and then you can get back in and swipe and get out of the way, and that's what Hyper Light Drifter traded on in a big way. And it has been one where we received a code, and I was like, yeah, I'll check it out if I have time. And it was one of those situations where I like booted it up, and it was like 2.5 hours later. I had stayed up super late. I had played it way too much. I was very tired. And it's not even like a particularly innovative game. It's just super solid. It's just like really well designed. It feels good. It looks good. It just really pulls you in quickly.
It's just like simple enough of having the action of, okay, you're going to have a lot of dodging. You can shoot arrows, but you can only shoot at the beginning. You can only shoot 4, and you need to actually attack with your melee to restock your arrows, Leo. So it's a weird system where it's like, you can't just sit back and just hit those over and over again. Like, you need to get in there and recharge things by at least trying to swing at something before you can sit back again and maybe take another pot shot. But it's just a lot of really smart, tight, small systems. But yeah, maybe I'm like in the second area, almost to the boss in the second area, but it's like a shorter game. I think it's like 6 hours. But Janet, how's this sitting with you so far?
I'm really into it. I mean, obviously it's getting super high praise everywhere.
Yeah.
And, I think Kyle nailed it. Like it's not that it's reinventing the wheel. It's just really good at what it does. It kind of reminds me of, again, not genre similarity, but in terms of quality, Little Nightmares 2, where I know that's a game I feel like not a lot of people had talked about when it came out.
Yeah.
But I'm like, this is really good at what it's doing. Like, this is better than the first one. Like, I'm happy with it. And that's probably still on my top 10 list for the year. I feel like this one's similar, might hit a little bit higher because I think it has what it really thrives on is the charm of the world. Like, I think, there's not a lot of writing in it, but I think the little bit of writing there is quite amusing and funny. Like you kind of have sort of like a hub area that you branch out from. So you have these checkpoints in the form of doors. Funny, I played the first 2 hours and every time there was a door, I'm like, it's death's door. I would say that over and over again until eventually like they were like, death's door. And I'm like, this is the door, y'all. This is the door we're looking for.
Door.
Yeah. And it has like a very simplistic upgrade system, which I really appreciate that in games in general. The OST is amazing. And it has just like a lot of great presentation elements. Like the visuals aren't like, crazy next gen or anything, but it's really nicely stylized. There's some cool things happening with like the foreground perspective wise. It sort of has that like, I don't know I don't want to call it isometric because it's not like it's zoomed out.
It's just a depth of field like type of thing. Yeah.
Sort of it's not literally top down, but it's like slightly angled where you can see a lot of the playing field. And it's funny because playing it, my brother's like, oh, is this like Hades? Because he would see there were these moments where you will end up kind of boxed into an arena and have to defeat a few waves of enemies. So it kind of has like a little bit of a battle arena vibe, which I'm like, that element's similar. I'm like, it's not like the same game, but elements of the speed and the hyper focus did remind me of that, which I did enjoy.
Yeah, even like with the Hades thing too. It's interesting because it's like, it's all about the afterlife. Right? You play this little crow who's basically death and you're going out to collect souls. But then like going back to the main afterlife bureaucracy area to slowly get your upgrades and stuff. Like it does have kind of that, Hades like structure, I guess, just returning to that spot, even though it's more of, okay, not going to be procedurally generated, not a roguelike here. You're actually trying to defeat all these bosses and conquer these different areas. But I've really been surprised by just like how it'll shake things up, even like the second area compared to the first, because the first is like, okay, feels like it's going to be very Zelda-ish. And the second is like, okay, it's inside, a little bit smaller, a little bit more puzzly, if you want to put it that way. It's got a really sweet vibe. It's definitely going to be an indie gem of the year, all that fun stuff.
It's funny, Janet, just real quick that you mentioned Little Nightmares 2, because that area that you're talking about, Hanson, where you're going after the witch and you're in her house, it looks like identical to the Little Nightmares mobile game, which also has you moving through an isometric house and like chasing a boss. Like you see the boss a couple times over the course of the game and you're kind of smaller in like a larger house. It's just wild how much I was like, because after beating Little Nightmares 2, I kind of went back and played the mobile game and stuff. And it was just funny that I was like, man, this really reminds me of all things, the Little Nightmares mobile game.
Weird.
Which is weird.
Yeah, the dark styles are in. Even that like Lost in Random games got that good, dark Tim Burton-y style. It's like, this is the vibe.
Something like cute characters in like a dark world. Also, there's some like goofy stuff in that's kind of in the game too. Like, again, very early, but I picked up an umbrella and they're like, here's an umbrella. It's a terrible weapon, but like it could keep you dry in the rain. And I'm like, I don't know if they're going to like use that for anything super significantly mechanical. But I think what draws me into exploring the world so much is that it just is pretty to look at and just interesting enough, because so far the puzzles haven't been like super crazy. It's a lot of like find the switch and hit the switch, or like I guess I can shoot my arrow and like fire up this thing, and I'm like, I got this. I played the Pathless, which if you're listening to this and haven't, you should also play the Pathless because it's a damn good game. But it has just enough to like draw me in, where like it's a 6-hour game, but I saw a lot of people tweeting like, oh, it's 6 hours, but I'm like 12 hours in. I'm like, I could definitely see myself spending a lot of time in this game because it's just an interesting, fun world. And I feel like I'll be rewarded in, items or checking out like how the areas change, or, you can kind of see it has almost a little bit of like Metroidvania vibes in the sense that I'll see things and I'm like, okay, I can probably drop a ladder later, or I could probably get, early on they're like, oh, if you're strong enough, you can try to kill me later. And I'm like, okay, mental note, like build up strength, like come back. So it has a little bit of that loop as well without feeling like you're totally stuck in an area or struggling to make progress in it.
It's all about opening shortcuts to make moving from point A to point B quicker. Which is rewarding for sure.
Oh, for sure. Kyle, are you frustrated with checkpoints? How you doing on that? Is it just making those runs is kind of part of the gaming lexicon at this point from the Souls games? Not that this game is a Souls game, but there's a couple times here where it's like, okay, pretty long checkpoints where I'm running back to the boss here. Yeah,
I actually ran into this thing where there's a keyholes that you can just go interact with and it'll open shortcuts for you. I didn't realize, I thought I needed keys, so I ignored a bunch of them. And I was going on really long runs fighting the end boss and stuff, or not the end boss, but the witch. And but it was then I realized my mistake. So now I think it's great, compared to what I was doing. It's like, it's nothing.
Oh, perfect. All right. Maybe we need to learn the map a little bit better, because it definitely is a game where it'll reward you to learn the map, find those shortcuts, get used to the layout. Yeah. Find those areas where you can come back to.
It's also, it is annoying to have you got to run a long time to get back to where you were, but the shortcuts element, it is rewarding to open a shortcut and be like, oh, if I have to make that run again, I can bypass a lot of this stuff now. That's nice. So it's like you kind of have a sort of a little bit of a negative experience, so that the reward ends up being a much more positive experience, which is a tough tightrope to walk in video games for sure.
Right.
One part where I did get kind of lost. I was trying to fight. It's in that same area where the witches area, basically. It wasn't her house, but it was the outer area, and I was trying to fight there's kind of a mini boss that has a giant what's it called? It has a spiky thing at the top. Y'all know what I'm talking about, a mace. Is it?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I was trying to fight that, and I was having a really hard time with it. So I had to try it a couple times, but I kept not knowing how to get there. I'm like, okay, wait, it's straight down and then to the right. I would go I'd fight 30, and then at one point too, spoilers for the game, you cannot just run away from people. They will just follow you and keep spawning. I had 80 people. I'm like, I'm just trying to try this again. I'm just trying to get to where I need to go. And eventually once I learned the layout a little bit more, I'm like, oh, it's not that far at all, but I'm not sure how often that will happen to me, or if that's, a personal thing of me just being dumb in that area. But that's a very slight cause for concern. The more thing I have beef with is the lack of health bar. And someone did point out to me online that there's cracks, colored, red glowing cracks.
On the bad guys?
On the enemies.
Yeah,
on the enemies. But I'm just if you could just give me a health bar, because that's the thing that kills you. Lack of patience always kills you. But I'm just I just want to know how much, you have a light and a heavy attack. I'm where I would just like to have a health bar. I would like all game bosses to have health bars. Very personal thing, but not too many complaints overall with the game. It's pretty darn good. I'm enjoying it a lot.
Yeah, it's rock solid. I'm curious to see how difficult it gets. I'm challenged a little bit already, but I'm also very bad at action games. And I went to Metacritic and Control F to search for the word challenging, and it was all over the place. So I'm bracing for impact of this thing to get brutal by the end. But it seems cool. So yeah, it's from Acid Nerve, who are the developers at Titan Souls here. Death's Door is the name of that game. It's on, an Xbox console exclusive, but not on Game Pass. And then it's also on Steam if you want to pick it up there. Leo, the time has come.
Death Jr.
For Death Jr.
discussion.
Let's talk all about it. Favorite Death Jr. memories, Kyle. Go.
The interview with the director where he said he wanted Death Jr. to be huge. And he's like, I want it to be a cartoon show. I want merchandise. I want this thing to blow up.
Will we see a Death Jr. reboot in our lives?
No.
Okay. All right. Bold take. Leo, whisper the most cursed words you could say on a gaming podcast. I dare you. Let's talk about your favorite game of the week.
Roblox.
Oh, my skin's crawling. Leo likes Roblox.
I knew you didn't really want to talk about it.
No, I do. I'm very curious about this because I have not given it enough of a chance. Ana Diaz, I believe, talked about Roblox a couple times on this podcast, but you've gotten into it, and specifically one mode, which it should be up my alley.
I've been streaming Roblox every few weeks for a while, just because it's really great for stream viewers to be able to hop into what you're doing for free.
Yeah.
And on any computer and on mobile, it's crazy. And there's a lot of really fun stuff in there, but I found what is the most fun I've had in there by far, which is a mode called Outlaster, which is a survivor. Exactly. It was really fun because I bought a little private server for like $2 for the month. Let all the stream viewers come in, and then they elected captains, and then me and the other captain, who were both in the voice chat on the stream, picked teams, like took turns picking players from the stream chat, essentially. And then doing challenges, which are like parkour challenges or memory challenges, puzzles, like all kinds of different challenges that are really fun. And the losing team has to vote to kick someone off, and you have to go based on performance for a while, but then you've got more rivalries going on and alliances forming. And there were just so many twists and turns and so many memorable arcs for characters that I would just recognize going throughout, like almost getting kicked off, clutching and getting immunity. There are like immunity idols and stuff you can play at the voting ceremony.
How do you find those?
It is crazy deep.
How do you find the idols?
You can find them between mini games while the other team is voting by like looking for clues in the environment, or else you can buy them, which I think you can buy with real money currency.
Oh God, that's a disaster. But if you're like playing
not immunity, but just like, you know, immunity for someone else or things like that.
Okay, but yeah, if you're just playing with like a group, like it does feel like it could be the greatest version of Survivor now, because they made like a Survivor game back when the TV show first launched. And I have it on PC. I've been meaning to stream it, but it's just like a collection of mini games. It's not what you want. And like this idea of, you know, not exactly Among Us, but having just like those social dynamics build up in a more structured way, I think is really smart.
It's real clashing personalities with like interesting mechanics for eliminating people and people coming back in redemption challenges. You know, I got kicked off, and then finally, after, you know, 20 minutes of waiting for me, an hour and a half of waiting for some other people, it was like, here's your chance. And one person will win this and come back in. And it's just the most thrilling thing in the world. Like, it was a 2.5-hour game for, you know, 30 people or so, 15 on each team. And I was just, there were moments where I was screaming, jaw dropped in shock, laughing my arse off plenty of times. It was crazy emotional. It was like the high points of your favorite reality shows, except you're living them. It's truly incredible.
That's amazing. Do you think it was just like this once in a lifetime fun social thing that happened, or are you going to keep going back to Survivor and Roblox?
We'll find out. I'm going to stream it again this Sunday. Okay. And we'll see if it was a fluke or not, a miraculously good match. But yeah, that's youtube.com/LeoVader or twitch.tv/LeoVader.com, DOTCON.
There we go. So is there like a minimum amount of people? Like, I'm interested in this just because I love Survivor. Like, how many of my friends should I rally to try and get this rolling? Like, what's viable for the total number?
I would bet 10 you could go with.
Okay.
For sure. I don't know about any less than that. But, you know, once you get...
Yeah, that's the challenge. Yeah, I'll send out a call.
Once you get down
Twitter.
to it, it like stops being teams. You know, it turns into a free for all.
Right.
So maybe you could just start in that zone.
Is it? It's got to be some jank, right? Like Kyle, you've seen Roblox. Every time I look at Roblox, it's always like, oh, this is a cute little attempt at something. But like, is that just part of the charm that you get used to? Is just it's going to be a weird, janky version of this?
If it's your first Roblox experience, yes. If you played a lot of Roblox, you'll be blown away by how good this thing looks. Like the voting ceremony is a cinematic with different shots and everything, cutting to the host opening up the votes and flipping them and showing them to the camera one at a time. And when somebody gets kicked off, they just hand in their torch or whatever to the host, and they've got you get a close up on them, and they can, you know, type in the text box, screw you guys or whatever, or, you know, I had a great time, made some lifelong friends or whatever, and then they run away.
Kyle,
my Roblox is like a huge staple for my kid, and like every time I look at it, it's something weird and different. And the most recent one that I walked in and saw what she was doing, she was like a realistic cat, and there was like all these realistic cats like they were just like hanging out outside, and she was like, it was almost like a scene from The Lion King where she was like on top of a rock and there were all these cats around. I'm like, what are you playing? And she's like, oh, I'm the leader of the house cats. There's a couple other different cat groups. There's like the feral cat group in the other side. And she was like, yeah, it's just, you know, an RPG. I happen to be the leader. These are all my cats here. And it's all like real life players. It's just like, that platform is bizarre. Like it is crazy how like innovative people have become within it. It's so strange.
Yeah, I can't wrap my mind around it, but maybe this is my entry point, combining Survivor with Roblox. It's like, that'll be the catnip to get me in this door. All right, so go download Roblox for free, everybody, and check out Outlaster.
Outlaster, yes.
Outlaster, perfect. Let's see. I played a little bit of Pokemon UNITE, the new Pokemon MOBA that is tearing it up on Switch. Also, another free game. I hate to say this, Janet. It's it might get you into MOBAs. Like, I'm not into MOBAs myself.
I'm gonna go download it.
I think you should, because I just played like the tutorial in one game, and I had a moment of like, I'm enjoying this. It is just simple enough. Like, maybe I've been missing out on this whole MOBA fad.
I mean, with the year the Switch is having right now, what's my alternative?
Yeah, it's true. I mean,
tell me what's on Switch that's good besides Bravely Default 2 from this year.
You got Mario 3D.
Skyward Sword.
All-Stars. Skyward Sword just came out. There we go.
The fact that that's maybe the clear answer, I think, speaks volumes to the Switch's year this year. So.
Yeah, it's had stronger, but it's about to get stronger again. They got the Pokemon remakes in the fall and stuff, and this
Metroid carry the team.
Honestly, yeah, very well.
Coming off the bench to save the day, you love to see it. But no, I mean, what about it do you think makes it potentially approachable for people that are outside the genre?
It's simple. It's simple, and your best friends from Pokemon are in it. You can run around as Snorlax. There's a lot of Charmanders out there. What's that?
Is Wooloo there?
I don't think so. It is funny just to see who's in there now, because it's like the perfect platform where they can continue to build it, and the more they add Pokemon, because they have quite a few to add, and it's just going to be a constant drip for people that are very into this. But it's funny to see like who are just the chumps of the Pokemon universe. Like, we got for basically the creeps that you're going out just to farm and stuff. Like, Apom is the big one. Like, why is he's like the bottom of the tier? I thought it'd be like a Rattata or something out there, but I guess he's like the new age Rattata for the kids. But I feel like an idiot even trying to talk about Pokemon Unite, so I'm gonna spend more time with it, and then we'll get Suriel to play it as well, who has poured thousands of hours into Dota, because I'm sure he'd have some much more interesting hot takes. But Kyle, if you had to predict Pokemon Unite and the overall success for a free Pokemon MOBA on Switch now, going to be on phones soon, do you think this is going to be a juggernaut?
No, but it will have its audience that will keep it alive, and I will get press release emails once a month that are like, hey, here's what's happening in Pokemon Unite this month. And I'll be like, oh, people are getting into that.
I mean,
it's teams of 3, right? Or how big is it?
It's 5-on-5.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
I'm actually hearing you talk about it now. Because I asked my daughter if she wanted to play it, and she was too busy being a cat in Roblox. No time for Pokemon Unite.
Yeah.
She's got her people to lead.
Exactly. And I'm not going to try to pull her away from that. But I was wondering, I was like, I wonder if this would be a good one for me, my wife, and my daughter to all download and just play sitting on the couch together, and it might be.
Totally. Tencent made it. That said, like, in terms of Pokemon mobile games or the Pokemon spin-off games, outside of like a dungeon game or something, like, the production in this is a lot better than I was expecting. UI wise, characters, all that stuff. Like, okay, they put some money into this. I'm very curious to see how it all shakes out.
It's half downloaded now.
Oh, good. Yeah, you can play during community questions.
Just get it go. Maybe I don't even know I have no idea what to expect. I know so little about the MOBA genre that it'll at least be interesting.
You literally can't fail. They're trying to like make this one feel a little bit more like a soccer match or something, where you're not like trying to tear down towers. It's like you build up points.
You said Janet's magic word, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you're building up points.
It's soccer. No, I don't like Rocket League. Weird, I know.
Oh yeah,
it's a disgrace to soccer.
It's so floaty. It's so floaty. Like, I love car. I'm like, car is good, soccer good. Just no, I didn't. And everyone says that, like, I only don't like it because I'm bad at it, and I am bad at it. But like, what do you want me to do this game? Like, so. There's no way to win. I'm like, what am I supposed to do here? And I can't win in this situation.
Yeah, that's tough. But yeah, check it out. We'll talk about it later. Kyle, real quick, Cris Tales.
Oh, sure.
You've been watching a little bit of that game?
Yeah, I've been watching a lot of it be played. My wife and daughter are playing it. It's their game that they're like playing together now. And that game is freaking gorgeous, man. That game looks so good. It's almost like I think I'm enjoying it more as just a passive observer than I would be if I were actively playing it, because the animation is just incredible. It's
ridiculous. So it is an indie RPG from Dreams Uncorporated. I think they're Colombian, which is like on the front of the billing for Game Pass, because it's in Game Pass. But it's an indie RPG that is combining kind of the gameplay and combat of Paper Mario, but then the UI in combat is the Persona 5 UI. And then the art style is gorgeous. It's kind of Tartakovsky, Kyle. How else would you describe what the hell is going on here?
Just really stellar 2D animation.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It was the game from the Skullgirls folks, Invincible.
Right.
Kind of reminds me of that a little bit. Like they play differently and they look a lot different, but just like, hey, we're going to do some of the best 2D animation in video games. Like that's sort of the MO of both of those games, you know?
Yeah.
And it's awesome to look at.
Is it a pun on crystals?
It is. Yeah. It's all about crystals for the story.
There's also
That pisses me off.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of characters like Chris, like they all have Chris as like a prefix for their name
There's
too.
Tales, like there's.
Yeah.
Christopher, and then there's like a Chris something or other.
Kringle.
That's right.
Yes,
Yeah.
there you go, Kringle.
Yeah, I played the first couple hours. I think I'm probably good. I'm really happy it exists. I think it's a great choice for Game Pass, even though it's available on absolutely everything. It's even on Switch there. But it takes a lot to get me into an indie RPG. To have like this big experience, like, okay, I like the inspirations this game is pulling from. The music's great. Visually, it's awesome. But it really has to be like a WoW RPG, I think, to get me through the whole thing. And like, there's small things, even playing on Steam, there's loading before every random battle. And like, it's a small thing, but it's like, Kyle, what is this? Final Fantasy Origins on PlayStation 1? I mean, hello. It's like that combined with just slightly too frequent random encounters. Like, I don't like that. I don't like running around then just hitting a load and then going into this battle over and over and over again. But it's cool. I mean, if those ingredients are up your alley, you should definitely check out some reviews, at least for Cris Tales, that whole RPG.
Two other quick things.
Yeah.
They have a character named Mario, which is like a bold choice in a video game to have a character in your game called Mario.
Yeah.
And they also have a character named Wilhelm, which it never occurred to me that could, be a person's name, even though, it in pop culture, it's named after a person, like Wilhelm Scream.
That's right.
Like I
Does
never.
Karen Scream?
No, I don't think so. But it was just like, oh yeah, I guess
missed
Wilhelm
opportunity.
can't just be a person's name. It does, it's
Yeah,
like,
man.
it's
If
not.
Mario's not saying "Let's go," maybe they don't want to get sued. Like
I don't know.
do
Is it
something, I don't know.
It's the name of the dude who's screaming, even, right?
Yeah, Wilhelm. He is an actor, fell off a horse and screamed. Right, is where the scream comes from.
He never stopped screaming. He was a notorious coward. And so everyone used to make fun of him. And then that one time he was captured. Well, this is now permanent in all films. Leo, did you see this Tom Clancy's XDefiant?
You know it.
One of the weakest names I've seen in the game industry for a while, but this is the new Ubisoft first person shooter.
Yes.
Where they're trying to combine a couple different Tom Clancy brands. And as Mr. Tom Clancy Rainbow Six himself, Leo, what do you have to say for yourself?
Do they intend for people to call it XD for short?
I hope
That's
so.
cute.
Yeah,
It
the
matches its
Ubisoft
kind
XD.
of edgy internet aesthetic.
Well, that's the thing, because they describe it, everyone was making fun of them because they described it as what? A punk rock mosh pit of a team-based hero shooter. But then like the gameplay itself doesn't look that absurd. It doesn't look like it's trying to, I don't know. Am I nuts? It looks a little bit.
No. This is something that's very worrying about the trajectory that Ubisoft is on. Because they made Hyperscape.
Yeah.
God bless them. Fine enough game.
Yep.
But, Apex Legends was a little late to the Battle Royale party, it felt, at that time, long before Hyperscape. But they brought so much new with the idea of respawning amongst a bunch of other things. Quality of life things that other Battle Royales immediately tried to copy because they were such exciting changes to the formula. And Ubisoft, unless there's some big surprise they're holding back, it feels like they just want to chase these trends without adding the new things that get attention on it
And they hope
and
that
make it worthwhile.
Yeah, in this case, like, oh, it's Tom Clancy's world. So they have some teams from the Tom Clancy universe that you might recognize, and they'll be pulling from that. But it does feel weird and late to introduce like our new 6v6 hero team shooter. Here we go. But it's free to play. Seems like a big production. And when they have so much success with something like Rainbow Six, like maybe it's just them just assuming this audience will come if they nail it out of the gate.
I mean, maybe that's my bitterness is
Yeah.
like, it's so hard to break into make a successful competitive shooter on the level of, millions of players. And the fact that they already have one and its players are crying out in agony year round about it not getting like enough attention
Yeah.
from both content and from, the game working properly, like them not continuously adding updates that make it unplayable. And, you know, just the other night we got a new patch in and I tried to play with my friends and it just reliably crashed my friend every single round and we just couldn't play that night.
Oh my God.
And that's not the first time that's happened. And it's 5-6 years into its existence. It's so frustrating to see them sidestep instead of saying, we're going to make Siege an actual engine that we can iterate on without destroying some random thing we had no idea it would, and then make this a mode that's more deathmatchy, even with different characters. Like adding that to the Siege ecosystem, because it has so many tens of millions of players, I feel like that would be a much more exciting move for me versus this, which just feels like, I know it's free to play, but still feels like a cash grab.
But isn't that what they're doing with the game that I want to call Quarantine? What is it called now?
Extraction?
Yeah, Rainbow Six Extractions, to try and tie into that player base with Rainbow Six with something else?
Yeah, sure, that's true. But that also is its own standalone thing that won't improve what Siege is. Which I don't think Siege is in a disastrous state, but it's clear it needs more work and more resources, and it seems to be Ubisoft's most successful thing it has going right now, so it's continuously flabbergasting that they're not putting more into it.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting take, yeah. XDefiant, though, Kyle, do you know why you should be interested in this?
No, I have no idea.
Well, here's a reason. The director of this is Jason Schroeder, or Schrader. I forget how you pronounce his last name, but he was the director of South Park Fractured But Whole, because this is the Ubisoft San Francisco team, which I know I'm probably more into development than most of the people listening and watching this, but it's like, I'm just fascinated by that idea of they were gearing up with that studio. They went from Rocksmith to now they're making South Park Fractured But Whole, a game that I liked a lot, but seems like it did not make a big splash when it came out. And then Ubisoft San Francisco was hiring a lot of former Telltale talent. And it felt like they were building up for like another RPG or something more narrative focused like South Park was. And then somewhere along the lines, now they've pivoted so freaking hard. And now they brought in the producer, Mark Rubin, used to be on Call of Duty. And now they have South Park's director directing this 6v6 first-person shooter. It's just a weird trajectory for that studio. But I'm happy to see him doing something. Kyle? I don't know.
Yeah, I'd always hoped for them was like, even if they weren't doing South Park, a continuing like comedy RPG path with the help of Trey Parker and Matt Stone. Like, it would have been super fun to see them do something completely new.
Totally.
You know, they both really like video games a lot. They're happy to make South Park stuff. It's their baby. But like, it would have been cool to see them in the same way they made, you know, the musical. Like, it would have been very cool to see them make something original in the video game space. And it seemed like, you know, that would have been the studio to do it. But yeah, things change.
Yeah, not to be too doomsayy about it all, but it seems like Ubisoft has just blown up to such a massive scale that all they can afford to do is like these really broad projects that are meant to appeal to the most people possible. Like Division is going that way too. You know, we have that free-to-play Division coming up.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's not like they're making bad games or anything, but it's interesting to see the path they're on. I'm a little more worried about it than I was a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Well,
less experimental, right?
Yeah.
Right. That's something we could talk about in community questions. But before we get there, we should remind people that, Kyle, this whole thing exists because of
viewers like you.
Viewers like you and listeners like you and everyone that goes to patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's and supports us at any tier, including people who support us at the bigger tier and they want to get a plug for anything on the podcast. They could plug their business. You can plug your streams, your podcast, anything like that. We'd love to see it. So please jump in there and check out the tier that's right for you. And thank you to the fine folks at Hello Hyrule. Hello Hyrule is the premier Legend of Zelda travelogue podcast. In each hour-long episode, we take a deep dive into a new location of the series, starting with Skyward Sword, and ask the hard-hitting questions like, do bokoblins have feelings? Is Skyward Sword's story a retelling of Jack and the Beanstalk? And
Stack of beans.
Is time magnets? Which is a great question. Whether you're about to revisit Skyward Sword with the upcoming remaster or you're visiting Skyloft for the first time, this play-along podcast is the perfect travel companion for you. So grab your sword and your sunscreen because tours are open today here on Hello Hyrule, available wherever you find your podcasts. Hello Hyrule is not responsible for any food poisoning experience while listening. Also, thanks to our fine folks at I Am 8-Bit, who have been huge supporters of ours for a very long time. They want everybody to know about the vinyl soundtrack to Tell Me Why. in their wonderful online store. This album looks beautiful. It has a quilt-themed cover art, which has to be seen to be believed. It has a great style to it. Definitely go check this out. The music's by Ryan Lott. The album art is by Theo Randall. And the vinyl soundtrack also comes with the digital download, and you can use the promo code BottleRocket, all one word, promo code BottleRocket, all one word for 10% off anything in I'm8bit's wonderful online store. And because I'm8bit's very generous, they're going to ship out as a prize to the best question of the week, Watam on PlayStation. That indie game Watam, they get a physical version of Watam, and they're shipping this out to whoever we deem has the best question submitted over on patreon.com/MinnMax. So everybody look alive here. Okay, first question. Here we go. Ben Shively is in here. He leaves a question over on Patreon, and he says, wow, wasn't that trailer for the new Dead Space amazing? Ben wrote that before the trailer was revealed, so you're very cheeky, Ben. It was good.
Not a lot to it.
It's
very exciting, but yeah,
nice.
I would like to see some gameplay.
It's probably going to be a while. Anyways, Ben says, while EA and similar companies do occasionally make games that aren't surefire successes, like It Takes Two, do you think we'll hit a point where these companies exclusively make their giant moneymaker franchises? Like a dystopian future where EA only makes sports games and Activision only makes Call of Duty. And I guess, Leo, to go back to you, it'd be Ubisoft only makes XDefiant 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Property.
That's right. That's extreme. I think there's always going to be a little bit of those ebbs and flows. You're always going to have that little bit of a bounce back like EA to have that moment of like, yes, we're cranking out the hits. We got our FIFA and we got our Maddens, but the small team realizes that it'll be profitable and they can make the argument that a single player Dead Space remake is going to happen. So don't be completely pessimistic, but Leo, am I being too rosy?
I don't think it's a matter of time or anything, but I feel like it could happen. You know, it's just the wrong people who get in charge, right? Like what happened with Konami. It's just, you know, there's no real reason from a purely capitalist perspective to make something like Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order versus Star Wars Battlefront 3 or whatever. You know, a single player experience they make as a gesture of kindness. It's not like it doesn't make them money, but they could be doing things that make them more money, and they know that. So you just like always need people in charge who have a true love for video games and a variety of them. And there's just a risk that someday these companies won't have that.
But maybe enough publishers have taken enough of those gambles, have rolled the dice so many times on like, yeah, look, it's not the single player story focused game that the community wants, but at the same time, we can make a boatload off microtransactions if we just nail it right. And when 1 in 20 of those ends up paying off, whereas you make something, I know this is an extreme case for a great game like this, but you make something like a Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order where it's like the highs aren't as high, but you're still going to get a sweet Ferrari out of the deal. I feel like there's still going to be that other end of the spectrum that can still fight for some basic profits, basic humane profits.
Yeah, as long as you have people fighting for them, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's also, to take another optimistic angle, like there's also that idea of like a studio wanting to keep talented people on board will sort of go the direction they want to go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because I know Naughty Dog struggled with that, like kind of early, like, right? Like they started that secondary team to pursue The Last of Us because like they were worried that people didn't have enough to do and they might leave, you know what I mean, and go somewhere else. So like, if the choice is like, we can keep these really talented artists here, but they want to make this single player thing versus like losing them and making something more profitable, I imagine they go with the former, hopefully, fingers crossed, you know?
That's a good point.
Yeah, that could be. But I understand, you know, where this person's coming from, especially in the news that we talked about a couple weeks ago about stuff like Assassin's Creed Infinity. I think I might have called it Infinite 6,000 times on that episode, but that idea of like, okay, we're going all in on the biggies, it just being as surefire as we can. But it only takes a couple of those to fall through before it's like, okay, let's get back to a normal human 3-year development cycle and something a little more manageable and roll those smaller dice. It's not too much to ask. So no, the apocalypse isn't coming soon, Ben. It's fine.
Not in gaming.
Not in gaming. I mean, yeah, the sun will melt you soon, but other than that. Cade Mead writes in over on Patreon and says, hey team, when was the last time you felt that childlike sense of excitement and wonder? And what caused it?
I forget the name of what the object is, but
Ooh,
literally
like
like
this.
a day or two ago, the in what was it, Cinnamon Toast Crunch. I live with like my family and stuff. So my brother's fiance poured a bowl of Cinnamon Toast Crunch, and it had those little skateboards that you can play with your like hands.
Yeah.
Yes. And she was like, "Oh yeah, I got this in my bowl of cereal," and we're all like, "You probably picked it out of the box. Like you didn't really pour it." She's like, "No, I did." And then she like opened it up and was playing with it, and we were all like, "Oh snap!" Like grind on some like we're all like older for context. Like I'm 27, my brother's 35. Like we're all just standing around the island like, "Oh snap!" Like it's crazy. And then like she'd like pull a trick and it'd land, and we're like, "Oh!" And only a couple of minutes. We were all sober during this also. Yeah. But it was just fun. Like, I don't know. Like it was a moment of childlike wonder. That's the first thing that comes to mind.
I thought you were going to go the direction of like, I looked up and I saw a shooting star at just the right moment. I didn't know it was just a tech deck going out of cereal.
Like, the light pollution, you're not going to see stars out here.
Okay, all right. I guess that's fair. Well,
Urban America.
By the way, that reminds me, real quick, tech deck reminded me of Steam Deck. And I know we didn't talk about it big in this episode, but we had a bonus video on our YouTube channel. If you want to check us out there, it's also the podcast version of the Patreon exclusive podcast feed where we unpacked it a little bit. But I pre-ordered one. Kyle pre-ordered one. Yes. Janet, did you get one?
No, I have not. I'm going to try to not because I don't need another expensive thing that I'm barely going to play. That's what I keep telling myself.
All right.
I probably will end up with one.
Yeah. And Leo, how are you feeling about it?
I have a PC already that's plugged into a TV, so I feel fine.
Yeah, but don't you
feel equipped? I'm happy it exists. I think it's really cool.
Leo, this one you can drop on your face as you're falling asleep, like laying down.
Oh, and it'll be extra heavy.
Oh my God,
You'll get a black eye.
Cool.
Anyway, sorry, back to what childlike wonder. What stands out for other people?
You know which one? I was thinking about this, and one that came to me somewhat recently was like watching Into the Spider-Verse in theaters.
Oh,
for the first time.
Good.
I was just like, this is incredible. I was like, I haven't seen a movie like this in ever, and it's just like it's such a. I went and saw that movie in theaters. I think 4 times.
What?
We all went as a family. Yeah, like it really like. I was just like this. That was probably the last time that I was just like eyes wide open. I was like, this is incredible. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's a good one on the movie front. I think for me, the childlike thing is really key, but I think and I'm not the biggest fan of it now, so it seems weird, but like when Pokemon Go first launched, I think that was a real moment of childlike wonder of like, all my old friends are coming back. Everyone's going to be jonesing for a Venomoth, and people are going to be talking about this randomly on the street. But specifically was right when it came out, we were visiting Bungie for, I don't know what it had been, like the Rise of Iron, maybe, for the release, for Destiny. And so we're in Bellevue, so it's a very techie town and stuff. And they have this big park in Bellevue. And Ben Reeves and Matt Miller and I went there at night, and people were losing their minds. There were like 100 people running around this field at night, screaming about there being a Bulbasaur on the far end of the field. And it was just this moment of like, this is one of the weirdest things I never could have expected, but it's just magical. And then a guy pulled up and he just parked his car and blasted the Pokemon theme song from his car. And we're like taking back the night. It was like, this is a weird vibe, but all right, it's great.
That is a good one. I do have a lot of memories of going weird places and being in parks with just like tons of other people and just being like, wow, we're all here for Pokemon. This is insane.
I won't talk to them, but it's cool abstractly that we're here for this reason. Yeah. I don't know. I guess another one is just like traveling a little bit, like going to Japan will fill you with some childlike wonder. And specifically, when I went to Malta for Metro Exodus, to cover that game, Janet. It was developed in Malta, very strangely enough. But like having the plane come down to Malta and just like looking over the Mediterranean and just seeing islands as we're getting close as the plane was coming down, and like all the islands look so different. Like the rock formations were all so weird. That was a really geeky moment just as a fan of geography, about just like, look at these weird islands in the Mediterranean. Why am I in Malta to talk about a video game? This is absurd. GameStop should not have paid for this. I don't know. Leo, are you dead inside or how you doing?
When I was in Nevis, Minnesota with my girlfriend on a little tiny vacation, we paddle boated out to the middle of the lake and watched the sunset. And right after the sunset, like it was actually legitimately getting dark, we heard these birds do their mating calls, two birds from opposite sides of the lake.
No.
But the calls would just echo so loud throughout the lake. Like you couldn't believe it was just one little creature with no, microphone. And it was a noise I'd never heard in my life. And they both perfectly mirrored it to each other. And it was just completely surreal. It was like I was really blown away by it in a way that was, core to me and undeniable. And I guess I would call that childlike wonder.
So they're on the opposite sides of the lake, and then it's like they were making the mating calls, but what was meeting in the middle was you and your beautiful girlfriend.
It really did have a beautiful symmetry to it, beautiful poetry.
And then you kissed like little birds.
Oh, you can't hear the noise I'm making, but it's gross.
It sounds like a bird
That's
kissing.
okay.
Yeah, we can imagine. Insert your own gross sound here. Chris Logan writes in and says, hey, Ben and the Horts. I recently asked the Discord community in the MinnMax Discord for 5 games that made you the gamer you are today. Okay, 39 people replied for a total of 195 games. Naturally, I gathered the data on a spreadsheet and turned it into a game. Let's play the games that made us. This doesn't need to be that complex. Can you guess which game appeared the most on the list? We got a tie. Does anybody have a guess for the games that made you the gamer you are today, according to the MinnMax Discord?
Super Mario Bros. One of the numbers, one of those numbers, 3.
Oh, Janet, great call. That's number 3 on the list. Excellent, excellent call.
I was actually going to skew younger. I was trying to think.
I think you're warmer, Kyle.
Games that made us. Minecraft?
What do you think? We got a bunch of 4-year-olds in our community? No, come on, grow up.
Super Mario 64?
No 64.
Really?
At least for the top batch.
To go more like, Mario Bros is great because if you're a little bit older, maybe you played it on like the original like hardware, and if you're a little bit younger like me, maybe you played it on like a handheld or something.
Yep. Mario World.
Still young.
Yep. Mario World's on there.
My key answer there for me personally, my top of that list would be Ocarina of Time.
Correct.
I don't think that's going to be top 5 though.
You're right. It isn't top 5 because it's number 1, Kyle. Of course, that's Ocarina of Time. But it is.
Wow.
It is tied with another game. When you think
Majora's Mask.
Interesting. That would be fun. No. Think other console, but in the same era.
Link to the Past?
Nope. 1 year before Ocarina came out.
Final Fantasy 7?
Final Fantasy 7. There we go.
And yeah, those are like the 2, right?
That's the 2. That's
the branch that you took for people in our age range, right? You either went the Ocarina path or you went the Final Fantasy 7 path.
Right. It's
one of them's the right path. I'm not going to say which one.
It's the Beatles and Rolling Stones speech from Pulp Fiction. Yeah. Number 4 is newer, Kyle. This game. I think it came out the same
Death's
year.
Door.
I think it came out the same year as Minecraft 1.0. For a hint.
What was I doing when I downloaded Minecraft on that crappy MacBook and it didn't play very well?
You weren't playing this game, I'll tell you that much. But
what was the year?
I think it's 2011.
Portal?
I think.
When did Portal come out?
Oh, no, not Portal. No. That would have been Portal 2, but nope. Kyle, this is a series, a loosely defined series that you went back to and seemed to appreciate later in your life. And now you're like, I'm a fan of that studio somehow. You streamed a lot of yourself playing it at Game Informer, I believe. I think.
Shenmue?
No, I think you streamed the 3rd entry in this series. Beloved Japanese series. Hardcore beloved Japanese series. Oh, this is interesting.
Yakuza? I don't know.
No.
I thought too.
Leo?
Dark Souls, right?
Dark Souls. There we go. There we go. Is Dark Souls 2011?
Yeah, you're right.
Somebody please tell me. Thank you, Chris, for polling the community. Anyways, Skylar Timmons writes in and says, I've been playing Breath of the Wild for the first time since it originally came out. I had the fun the first time. That's a good way of putting it. But I didn't enjoy it as highly as others because I missed a lot of the conventional Zelda mechanics like dungeons and stuff. However, I've been having a blast the second time around and appreciating things more than I originally did. What is a video game or piece of media that you've grown to appreciate more than the first time you experienced it?
I rewatched Edge of Tomorrow recently, which I liked a lot at the time.
Yeah.
And watching it now, it's like a perfect movie. It might be in my top 10 or something. It's
wow.
So
That's such a good one because I think a lot of people in that camp have watched it when it came out and said, hey, better than I thought. But now to go back and reassess, like, oh, it's a very special, beautiful snowflake here.
It is.
Yeah, that's good.
I had one. like Majora's Mask was a big one for me, right? Because I played it when it came out, and I liked it, and I played it and beat it and had a good time with it, got all the masks and everything. But it was like, I don't really love the looping part of it. Like that part I didn't love. But when the remake came out on 3DS, and I think it's like the same thing that happened with the person who wrote the question. I'm sorry, I forgot their name.
Skylar.
With Breath of the Wild, where your expectations are different going in, so you're better prepared to like understand how the game works and functions. And replaying Majora's Mask on 3DS like skyrocketed it in terms of my like Zelda ranking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's like where it might have been near the bottom, it is now near the top, because it's like it just knowing exactly how that game functions after playing through it once. I loved it so much more the second time around.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of this stuff. It's just anything that really grew on you in a big way. But I didn't dislike it at first by any means, but I enjoyed No Country for Old Men in the theater when I saw it for the first time. Probably had an Edge of Tomorrow-like experience of like, that was really good. Right on. And then it wasn't until like years later rewatching it again and again, and it's like, oh no, I need to have this movie memorized and insert it into my veins and become its essence and let it destroy me emotionally. So yeah, that one I think. Mike Poe submits a comment over on Patreon and says, hello everybody. I wanted to ask about long games, particularly the bad rap they get in today's discourse. More and more I'm starting to think that I'm an outlier. I love long games like Divinity Original Sin, Dragon Quest XI, Red Dead 2, Red Dead Red 2, Witcher 3, and when I finish a good long game, I feel so much more satisfied compared to finishing 3 or 4 smaller games. If the gameplay is good and you enjoy being in the game's world, what's the problem with a 50-hour experience?
There's no problem.
No problem here, Mike. We got no problem.
I think for me, a lot of games can start out fun and I'm just tired of them long before they're over. And so then the problem is if they have a cool ending that would make me like the game more, I don't want to see it. I don't want to put in the hours to get to see it.
Yeah, and there's always going to be a lot more belly aching from people doing this professionally about long games than, real gamers, TM, I think as they like to put it. But nothing wrong with it. I think it's cool. Like, buy a couple games a year. They last that long. Something like Divinity Original Sin. You're having a much deeper experience than us jumping around to a couple indie games and checking out Cris Tales for 2 hours, then moving on. Like, you're doing it right, Mike. You're experiencing
right
stuff.
now.
I know, exactly.
It's like me downloading games I'm never going to play on the side. I'm like, I'm going to get to it.
Oh, but when you have them sitting on that Steam Deck off to the side and you're going to get to those, that's when it's really going to be potent and beautiful.
Right, so the Oculus Quest, I don't play.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So Mike, no problem here. Please don't hate us. We love you. Owen Shannon writes in and says, hey folks, so this one is kind of philosophical, I guess. You all ready? Okay. Everybody feeling smart? Janet, I like your philosophy pose getting ready for it.
A little bit of pretension. Like, okay. All right.
Is irony/sarcasm/satire worth it anymore? Personally, I love sarcastic humor, but especially with social media, it seems like 50% or more people just take it all literally, or people are ironic and self-aware to a toxic extent that makes people feel bad about liking things. Is the misinformation and toxicity that comes from this style of humor worth it? I'm starting to lean towards no.
First of all,
yeah.
Most people don't know what irony is, myself included. Like I have studied and I'm embarrassed to say this because I did teach English, high school English for a period, and I studied English in college and I studied education in college. Oh man, actual irony is so hard to understand, like what it actually is. And so many times people will be like, this is ironic, but it's not. But like no one likes that guy either. So I think we all kind of know what it's supposed to be. So I think that's one awkward layer of that.
It's not a coincidence. It has to be something beyond that. There's actually a really good poster, like those oatmeal posters that like break down, what is it called? Like basically like linguistic terms. They'll like have a couple cartoons on that. They have one on irony that's really good, but I still struggle. Sarcasm's weird because it's like, I think sarcasm probably does only really work when the audience you're speaking to understands what you're saying or they can hear you, where you can convey the tone. People often tell me that I'm really sarcastic, which concerns me because I almost never say anything I don't mean. So I'm like, oh no, I'm just really mean or really excited. Like I think I just live in the extreme. I think people use sarcasm as just a shorthand, well, in a couple different ways. I think easy comedy right? But then on the other side, I've had people say that to me about like my family would be like, "Oh, Ben, you're so sarcastic." And I was like, I guess I don't really see myself as a very sarcastic person, but I guess that's probably insane. And probably listeners can point to 3,000 times in this episode alone where I have been sarcastic, but I don't see it as like a go-to thing for me. But Leo, you're the king of comedy, TM. Is it worth it anymore, or is it just so overly done and toxic online that it's ruined sarcasm?
Also, congrats on taking that title from Robert De Niro.
It was, yeah. Congratulations, man.
Thank you. I deem it acceptable.
All right. Wait, was that sarcasm?
I think there is a lot of, definitely talking about that in the context of online posting. It is definitely dangerous. I think you see a lot of people making fun of, wokeness or whatever by making this super ironic, ridiculous post about that's supposed to be like uber woke. And then it's taken completely seriously by certain corners of the same, side of the spectrum. And they're like, look at this ridiculous thing. Look how ridiculous the idea of caring about other people's feelings has gotten. It's gotten so out of hand. And it's like continuously feeding that cycle is itself doing parodies. And I just feel like people need to be responsible with that kind of ironic posting, and they are excited by not being responsible about it. So it won't ever be changed.
Yeah. I think I often think about your E3 video, Leo. And I think about, I'm trying to remember what the game was where,
the bees.
Yeah, with the bees, your wonderful video with the bees, the big E3 recap. What's it called again on our YouTube channel?
E3 Hive.
E3 Hive, of course, that's a better way to search for it. Yeah,
the bees, yes.
Yeah, there can't be too many of those. But there's this one moment where it's like you're like, I don't want to be mean to this game, but I need to say something. Do you remember the one I'm talking about? I forget what the game was, but it was just that
Fallout.
I don't
76?
Maybe it was. Yeah, and you're like, my mother told me not to say anything at all, that type of thing. But it's just that I don't know. It's that reflex of I guess the shorthand for humor is be mean.
That's always something, writing jokes. I have to very intentionally catch myself of like, my first thought is usually to dump on this thing.
Right.
And then even, by the time I'm recording it, it's like, oh, well, this isn't one of the stronger ones. It just technically was a joke and I sat with it. But I have to really go through and to be like, what's the meanness to clever joke ratio here? And am I happy with it?
Right. And on the much smaller scale, I experienced that when we do our Thanksgiving jokes about the year and stuff, where I do find myself like, how do you write a joke about a game that isn't just being mean about something about the game or the developers? It's surprisingly challenging. Try it at home, everybody. Grizzled Gaming writes in and says, hey, everybody, what do you think was the last major innovation in gaming? Simple question, difficult answer, I'd add.
On the hardware side or the game design side?
I don't know. Last major innovation. I mean, if you just say PlayStation 5, you're going to be so boring. I'm going to boot you from this call.
VR. I don't know.
Yeah, VR. I mean,
not a bad answer.
You're
honestly.
probably
boring,
right.
though, right?
It is ungodly boring, but yeah, I think you're right.
I was trying to think. I don't have a great answer, but I was trying to think of like gameplay mechanics that popped up in a game that everyone was like, "Ooh, I'm going to use that." You know what I mean? And I can think,
jumping out of an airplane.
Well, not even a mode. Like I was thinking more of like, and this is further back, but like Ocarina of Time having lock on, right? Where you could lock on to an enemy to engage them in a fight. That was like everything had it after that. You know what I mean? And I was like there's got to be stuff like that has happened recently, but I can't really think of anything. Just like a mechanic that everyone grabbed onto and just used.
Fast travel's interesting.
Fast travel. But when did that come out? I feel like that's been out for maybe secretly a long time.
Probably.
Fast travel's been around.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. That's I mean, I was thinking mechanically as opposed to hardware, I think true game design that really everyone saw and was like, oh my gosh, I mean, Breath of the Wild had a little bit of that. Like we've seen a lot of climbing and stuff like that now, which they didn't invent climbing or anything. Breath of the Wild didn't invent climbing in video games, but the way it was integrated, I think, was really broke down barriers. Like, it's tough for me to play games now where there's barriers in the way. You know what I mean? Especially in open world settings.
Because they're constantly getting broken by Link. This is kind of a fusion of hardware and design, but crossplay? Does that count as the last major innovation of just finally now it's almost an outlier for a game doesn't have crossplay? You're seen as an old stodgy beast.
No,
That I struggle
too boring. I don't know. Everything's boring.
I struggle to call that an innovation too, because it was more like, why doesn't this exist?
Yeah, it's interesting. It was just wrong for a few dozen years. Now it's right.
Right. I don't know. Let us know in the comments what stands out as the last major innovation design-wise.
Chat mentions asynchronous player stuff, like the signs in Dark Souls and like the structures you can do in Death Stranding. That's a pretty cool one. And I think that is something that, they said entirely reliant on more modern tech. Yeah, where you couldn't really do that for a long time.
Yeah.
Also, someone also mentioned the warp pipes as fast travel. I don't think so. Like, come on.
I mean, yeah.
Oh, hey, you could play the flute and Link to the Past. I only think in Zelda, turns out.
Yeah,
Now we're getting into like how like this is technically that kind of like now we're getting into like hamburger is a hot dog. The hot dog's a sandwich territory.
Next thing you're going to tell me a hamburger's a hot dog.
I get, or a hamburger's a hot dog. But like that doesn't make any sense. And if you go to a sandwich shop and you ask for a hot dog, they're going to think you're an idiot. Like you know.
Right. Although I'd like to see you try.
Like that person who made the comment.
But yeah, Grizzled Gaming, that's a good one. Ian T. Clark writes in and asks, what non-social media related app do you use on your phone the most?
Safari.
Cool. I
use one called Overdrive to read library ebooks.
Really?
Does Gmail count as social media?
Yeah.
Yeah, it probably is. Wait,
Really?
This is always
The
on hand.
Starbucks app. I feel like I'm very basic sounding.
Kyle's doing those
That's a
sounds.
good one.
He uses it on a daily basis.
I don't even keep it in a folder. I just got to have it ready.
Every time your daughter eats a vegetable at the dinner table.
Here's one. This one is like, my daughter would always ask me how to spell things. So I found an app. She doesn't need it anymore because she's very smart. But like, I found this app that I could just write things out in big text. So she'd be like, Dad, how do you spell monkey? And then I would just be like, here,
Instead of
to speak with her as little as possible.
Yeah, what are you talking about?
That's parenting.
That's MinnMaxing.
No, it's the difference between spelling out a word slowly and just being like, here, I've just written it for you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I found it very handy.
Okay.
I'm just trying to think of weird stuff, man.
Mm-hmm. Hey, pop quiz, Leo. Hands where I can see them, buddy. Now give me your frickin' money. Okay, Leo. Oh, your cat's tail is a little hand up as well. All right, Leo. Spell Looney Tunes.
LOONEYTUNES.
Correct. Yeah, good job.
Do I win the bet, Hanson?
Yeah, I guess so. No, Kyle and I were debating in the Max spoilers for Space Jam, which is up on YouTube and in the Patreon exclusive podcast feed. We're trying to figure out, polling 100 random people on the sidewalk, how many people would spell it TOONS versus TUNES? I think a majority would go TOO.
I agree.
Okay. But we're
and
like
my
really
argument
smart.
was that the logo is very iconic, so people know how to spell it. Because
They would think it's a Mandela effect thing, the TUN.
Yes, you're totally right. Yeah. I think logos can be iconic, but the spelling in the logo, Kyle, like the Berenstein Bears, like that's an iconic logo. It's up there with Coca-Cola. Can't get away from it. But the spelling, I think. Anyways, for app, I use Strava every day when I go on my morning bike ride.
See, but isn't that social media because you can connect it with people?
But
like,
does it count if I refuse to do that and I have everything default to private because these times are for me only?
I think that's just you being
weird
how you are, You
can
like,
say,
you know what I mean?
can use another word there. That's fine.
If I don't follow anyone on Twitter, but I still am opening it and just looking at like trending you know what I mean? Like
I just like the UI.
I think the better comparison is if you sign up for a Twitter account, don't follow anybody.
Well, yeah.
Actively privatize your account and make sure no one follows you, but still post tweets all the time.
Right.
I think that's the comparison.
That sounds ideal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Caleb Murray writes in and says, hey, Pod Crew, I know this is more of a Crossfade thing, which is your music podcast, but I recall Hanson mentioning several times, and I just got to know, has Hanson or anyone else listened to the new Modest Mouse album, The Golden Casket? If so, what do you think about it? No. I I am an idiot when it comes to music, and I had no idea that Modest Mouse had released a new album. So thank you for letting me know, Caleb Murray. Because honestly, I went on a big road trip last week, and I listened to Modest Mouse the entire way. And I did not know that there was a new Modest Mouse album. Now I feel like I'm dingus for wasting all that old Modest Mouse time.
Are you a Spotify guy?
I don't pay for it, but I downloaded it last year. So you can't listen to an album.
That's how I find out when bands I like have new music. Is I get an email that's like, hey, this band you like has a new album. I'm like,
I turn those off. Like, I don't want you emailing me.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's how I learn about new music because I, don't listen to a lot of new music lately.
My name is Dan writes in and says, when was the moment you realized you were taking the hobby of playing video games more seriously than the average person? This is very revealing. I think for me, it was like talking to my friends about games, and I would use a developer's name and they'd be like, we don't know what you're talking about. I'd be like, oh, like I remember like when I started at Game Informer, we'd just be in the issue meeting or something and people would be like, well, Randy said the other day. And I'd be like, what is it? Oh, they're talking about Randy Pitchford. Okay, got it. But like, yeah, just recently, like maybe when we were recording the Lord of the Rings commentary track, Leo, with Ronnie, but I mentioned like Cliffy B, and Ronnie's like, who is that? I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Like you just like games. Like there's no reason you should know who Cliffy B is as an individual, unless you're talking about his hot new book, which I am excited to read whenever that thing comes out. I don't think it's out now. But yeah, does anybody else have another example of when you realized that you were taking it way more seriously?
I've always felt like I was better than my peers.
Yep, in most ways.
I can't pinpoint.
Yeah.
Well, I had I guess like late middle school, early high school might have been a point where I was like maybe getting into it a lot more than other people. But then I started working at a GameStop and worked there for a long time. So I was kind of always surrounded with people who were as interested in games as I was. But yeah, I certainly had friends I played like in bands with and music and stuff, and they would play Halo. And then I would be like, oh, we should also play this. And they'd be like, no, we're good. We have Halo. Like, we don't have to.
But you got to check out Brute Force, guys. It's the same engine.
You still have Halo, which is crazy to think about. Mm-hmm. Like the people who still only like played like that one or two games still have that. Yeah, I think watching E3 is probably my biggest indicator.
That's a good one.
I'm like weird, But I wasn't like trying to talk to people about E3 on Monday. Like, did y'all see? And it's kind of odd too, because like I grew up having part of my life have my younger life have social media, because I got on Twitter in high school. So like I don't know if I was like finding new people to like talk to about games that way, but I think one reason I never really felt like that ostracized over it is like it wasn't a big talking point with my friends to begin with. And at home, like my brother played games, and also we played games a lot, but I don't think it got to a really, really extreme point until I did start doing it as a career, where I'm like, okay, now we're going to meticulously go over and we're now going to play through the entire back catalog of the greatest games ever, while also playing the most games that come out, while also getting on Game Pass, while also getting on arcade. And now I'm so deep in it that when people tell me that this year is slow, I get kind of frustrated, because I'm like, but there's so many, and I know it's not like a banger year, but I'm like, but there's so many games coming out. Like there's this, and this. And my family's like, that's because you have your job. To us normal people, we're just playing Ratchet and we haven't played anything else since. And I'm like, so I guess maybe this year is when I realized that I'm extra.
That was a real turning point.
Yeah.
Logan Krause writes in and says, hey, MinnMaxers, about 20 minutes through the previous MinnMax Council podcast, I realized I was wearing tennis shoes, grilling, and listening to the show while admiring my freshly cut lawn. What the heck happened to me? I'm 25 doing this stuff. What is your guys' most boomer or dad moment? Thank you for listening to MinnMax Council, our Patreon exclusive podcast, Logan Krause.
Someone wrote in about sheesh.
Oh no! Oh no! And I didn't know what they were talking about.
It's up there.
Yeah, that's up there. I had one where this last weekend I was hanging out with a bunch of like old high school friends and stuff, and we went to a beach, and then we went back to like the campsite, and we're heading back to the campsite, and look, this is a long story with very little payoff. I just want to prepare everybody for that.
That's my favorite kind of story.
Yes.
Basically, one of my friends forgot his t-shirt at the beach. So we grabbed it to bring back to the campsite. And the t-shirt was a Scooby-Doo t-shirt. And somebody said, oh, it looks like another Kyle forgot his t-shirt. And I said, Yeah, I bet right now he's back at the campsite saying, Scooby-Doo, where are you? And old high school friends were like, okay, that's a dad joke. Okay. And it was a moment of like, is that just my sense of humor? Is it just full dad joke at this territory where I'm not saying it was a great joke, but I was confident in making that joke until it was hit with just a solid brick wall of like, what are you doing? Why are you talking like that?
What do you think you are right now? And it's like, whoa. And then your whole life flashes before you.
And then I just ran into the water. I just kept running.
Hair just turned stark white.
Yeah. It was this Last Crusade. Oh! I don't know. Leo, are you a dad yet?
I don't get that Snapchat thing.
Oh, okay.
I feel like it's
just late to not getting it.
Yeah, I think that's dead, right?
Like, I know.
Realizing.
I'm thinking back when it was more of a thing, and I was trying to engage with it, but everything you can do in that app is a secret code, a secret combination of gestures that no one tells you except unless you have really cool young friends. And the just disappearing thing, like I never got the point of Snapchat. You know, I didn't get it on any level. And it felt like I was a grumpy old man.
Yeah, it can be fun and secret and naughty and stuff. That's the goal. That's what people want. Oh.
Be well behaved.
I think for me, like I don't have a lot. I mean, I'm still fairly young. I mean, I think all of us are like not like super old or anything, but I think just taking joy in like very mundane things. Like I finally had like a really clear schedule yesterday and I decided to use it to reorganize my kitchen. And I'm like, like we're really getting this done. You know, that's kind of like, that's kind of like, I think of it as like, what's your washed moment? Like that's kind of washed. I also think when I substitute taught I think I subbed for like 6 months. If you don't know what washed is, just context clue. If you don't know what washed is, you're probably washed. That's also a thing. But
is that like being basic?
Washed means like, so it basically means that it's kind of like dried up. I know it sounds like opposite because washed would be like moistened, but you're
Does it make any sense?
The story's full of holes.
Washed up.
Like it's over. Like your heyday, like your high era. Like if you're like a has-been, it's like a has-been.
It's a shortened of, washed up, right, Leo? I mean, that's
okay. Actually, that's like washed up. Yes.
Okay. Got it.
Oh, they shortened it. Okay.
Yeah. But I think just like not knowing like what apps like actual kids use, like, cause I would sub in like high schools and, you know, the students would be secretly getting on not Omegle, but something similar that's like an app version. And first of all, I'm like, you're not going to do that here for a lot of reasons too. Everyone who's an adult now who did that realizes that's like extra sketch, so don't do that. But also,
what is it? Omegle?
I just didn't know what apps they were naming.
What is
Omegle or Omegle or whatever. Like it's like you could video chat with strangers. It was like pretty big back in like I don't know, like a long time ago. Some people still use it, but
Chat
there was like
roulette?
an app.
There are different things that are the same.
Yeah.
Weird.
But there's like some random app they named and I never heard of it and I still haven't heard of it. So I think just not knowing what apps young people use is kind of like, all right.
I get it.
Garrett,
Garrett,
I was just looking into it recently for a video, the difference between chat roulette and Omegle. I went to chat roulette initially, and there's a unmoderated section that is closed forever because of what people get up to on those video chats. And on the other hand, Omegle has an adults only one now, so they kind of went different directions with that. That's the difference between them nowadays.
Garrett Becker writes in and says, "Yo, Benz and the other people, my girlfriend and I are getting back into VR." This is an interesting question. I have an Oculus Quest 2 and it's awesome. See, Janet, they're enjoying it. However, my girlfriend only has one arm. I've noticed that a lot of games won't let her play because of this. Can you all think of any good VR games that can be played one-handed?
First answer is
well, wait. Okay, Janet, you got one? What do you got?
No, I'll go last because I actually don't have one, but I have a comment that's relevant.
Leo? I'm sorry. Okay. Everybody relax. Everybody, let's take our turns. Kyle first.
Beat Saber can be played one-handed. You just have to go in the settings. Like you have to say, like, one-handed mode.
Oh, interesting.
And Pistol Whip defaults to a single gun, and it's very good. Those are like my two favorite VR games, and they can both be played one-handed. But I would imagine that they probably already are playing those because they're so popular.
Yeah. Okay. Good. And let's see. Does any other student want to answer this question? I think I'll choose on Little Leo Vader.
As far as I know, these are both PC only. So if you have a PC, you can like play them through your Quest, but only then. So sorry if this is irrelevant to you. But Until You Fall is a game I famously love that you can play one-handed for sure. You're just blocking attacks and striking, and you can do that all one-handed. It just might be a little more difficult. And one I played recently called Fire Escape, which is kind of a interactive theater type experience where you're sitting on your fire escape and you're looking at this apartment building and all these big windows to all these different rooms. And it's kind of a murder mystery where you see the murder go on and you pick which room to look into and overhear people's conversations and try to figure out the murder. And it's like an hour long, but you can't get it all in one go.
Yeah.
It's really cool. I think the story is really interesting, and you just basically point at the rooms and like answer your phone. So it's very easy to play.
It's like a Rear Window simulator or something.
Very much so.
That sounds sweet.
No, my joke was going to be better, Hanson, or a joke to begin with. I was going to say they didn't get the rights to Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo. You know, remember that game? They announced it. It's called Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo. Yeah. They could have called it Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window, but they had to call it Fire Escape.
Janet, is there a joke here?
Probably.
Okay, thank God he turns the camera off. Okay, anyways, Janet, sorry, now we get to your comment. Last but not least.
So unfortunately, nothing comes to mind because I've been a bad person who doesn't play the Oculus Quest. But I would encourage you to check out. I know. To check out Can I Play That's website, caniplaythat.com. It's an outlet that is entirely dedicated to doing accessibility reviews and accessibility content. All of their reviews are from an accessibility standpoint. So
interesting.
They review stuff and break it down for like physical disabilities, hard of hearing disabilities, like sight-related disabilities, and a bunch of other stuff. And they review based on like accessibility. It's not about like how like fun the game is or whatever. Yeah. And they haven't done a lot of VR from what I see. I searched VR and I see like some Dream stuff mentioning Moss Book 2, but I think just check out that site or maybe even get in touch with them. They have a Patreon, they have a Twitter. It's a pretty small team of writers, but I think that could be a really good resource for questions like that.
Yeah, well, there we go.
VR Chat also has a lot of worlds, and you can't even have two-handed interactions in that game. So like most anything you can do in VR Chat, you can do handed. And there's some cool like single player escape room type campaigns. Like there's a surprising amount of actual content in there, even if you aren't on board for the full VR Chat experience.
There we go.
And on Janet's topic, we should also shout out, I'm not fully sure how it's pronounced, but a Dagger system, Dager system by former Game Informer intern Josh Straub, right? Runs that website. And similar idea to what you mentioned, Janet, where it's like a site that's focused on accessibility and talking about games from that perspective, which might be helpful.
I've produced a couple of videos for them, yeah. Nick L writes and he says, "Hey, cohorts, another horrifying story is broken." Oh, by the way, everybody brace for impact. Another horrifying story is broken about a culture of abuse in the gaming industry, this time at Activision. What can we as consumers do to help combat this? I know I can, quote, speak with my wallet by not purchasing their products, but does the drop in the sea of my minimal purchases really affect anything? How can I respectfully make my voice known about this and other things being the reason I don't support a company? So for a little background here, Activision Blizzard, seems like it's Blizzard specifically, as far as I could tell, is in trouble with the state of California. New reports coming out just about, it turns out that was a horrific environment for a lot of women to work in. You can go down that rabbit hole yourself and read some stories just to get an idea of what's going on in places like that, but it gets pretty dark pretty quick. But yeah, what can we do? What can the average consumer do to help with this in studios? Yeah. It's a tough question.
It's a hard question that there's not like a great answer to, but I think just like publicizing it and being vocal about it and just looking at it and pointing at it directly and being like, that sucks and that needs to change, like
right.
Whether that's on like social media platforms or what. But I think also just like, it's tough from the wallet angle. Yeah, because I mean, I hope that you could vote with your wallet, and I hope that would make a difference. But I don't know if it would make as much of a difference as just being vocal. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and kind of the one of the refrains in that story was like it was just kind of a general frat boy culture that was pretty rough. And I've definitely experienced a lot of that. Visiting studios for a decade now. And you see that, I mean, nothing as bad as was in those stories, but it's like, I totally get it when it's a bunch of guys in their 20s. Like, I understand how this culture can just kind of seep in and it's tough to blast through that. That said, not saying it's fixed by any means, but it's like, it feels like just culturally things have moved so hard and far in the last couple of years that hopefully more studios kind of are aware of these big issues and are trying to do something about it. I'm not saying they're off the hook for it, but it, at least from being outside the circle, it feels like, boy, I would hope those studios have the fear of God in them a little bit more about how horrific this is for so many people.
I think there's a couple elements that like lead into this kind of culture that I think we can just be careful about how we talk about and respond to, which is that games are such a boys club, like that, you know, women getting harassed in online games is such a common thing that so many don't want to even like use their microphones or whatever. So it's a matter of, you know, calling out people who you see doing that. And I think also an element of like that games are this dream job for everybody versus like a job that should have real HR and real, you know, a real workplace boundaries like any job would have. It kind of gets into like, I don't know, in other places of the entertainment industry that have a huge problem with harassment. It's like this, I don't know, this kind of power dynamic that people think they're, you know, invincible when they get to a certain point. And I think it's just a matter of like being realistic about all this stuff. And if it's like maybe as much as you can vote with your wallet, also being a positive voice in the conversations you're having day to day around this stuff.
Yeah, I think being like aggressive about what, like, it's not enough to have like a belief in any, you know, and these things have so many parallels to like other, you know, forms of repression that run through society, be they racial, social, all these other things. But it's about being actively against the things that you're not against. So it's not enough to be like, oh, well, I'm not sexist, or I wouldn't say these things, or yeah, like, of course, like I'm here for, I love women in games, like love developers, blah, blah. But it's like, okay, like, but what do you do to really help with that? Like, are you actually doing, and I even have this for myself. Like, I've looked at my own YouTube channel, which is, I have like 2,000 subs, and somehow I have literally my analytics from the last 28 days. My audience is 100% men. Yep. 100% men. And you would think that me being a woman would help with that kind of automatically, but like, it doesn't always. And that, like, for me, that signals, okay, what can I do in a non-patronizing way to get more women, you know, to view my content and to get my content in front of more women? Or, you know, I do a lot of content with men, you know, making content with a bunch of men right now. Like, how can I get myself to work with more women? Like, that is something I want in my career and for the industry. Like, do I actually, if I think of the women I'd want to work with, are there any who are like me, who are not at outlets that I conceivably could build a professional relationship with? And that's not to say that the onus is all on me. Obviously, I'm just using myself as an example of how even someone like me, who is, if you follow me at all on anything, or if you've listened to this, you already know kind of my stance on all this stuff, and I'm very vocal about it. But there's always more you could be doing, which that's kind of intense, and like, it's a lot of work. There's a lot of work for a lot of things in society, and I think it's very easy to feel overwhelmed by, okay, well, like, there's sexism and there's racism and there's classism and we don't have healthcare, and also the planet's dying and Bezos is flying into space, and also like, I kind of just I need self-care. I should go to therapy. I need to work out. Like, you know, this can snowball very, very quickly. As far as like voting with your wallet, I think that's always up to what your hard line is. Like, I admittedly haven't voted with my wallet for almost anything. I think the first time I'll be voting with my wallet is when I don't play the Harry Potter game coming out, because I just don't want to be involved in, honestly, for me, that line is because I think if I streamed it, I would have to put such a big asterisk. I don't think it's worth streaming. I feel like I feel like I'd be letting my community down with the kind of community I have been fostering. Again, very extreme case, but like, that's my hard line. You know, I don't listen to Kanye West anymore because he's said some really out of pocket stuff, and I just can't do it. Are there other artists that are also terrible that I also listen to? Yes. So I think that's always very personal. And to echo what has already been said, amplifying things. I think too, if this shocked you, you really need to assess your view of the world. And I don't mean that to be super aggressive or to make anyone feel bad, but I see this with a lot of things when it comes to like race and sexism. People are often surprised who aren't in those groups. And like, for me as a woman and a woman of color in the industry, like, it is horrific, and it is like crazy to conceive of a company that functions in such a backwards way. But at the same time, I'm like, yeah, I could see that. Like, I could totally see that because like I lived it. I live it every day in small ways and in big ways. I think being really aggressive about stamping out microaggressions in the space is super important. Like, there are so many times where like me or other women have pointed out like, oh, this comment's sexist, and people will always be like, is it? I think they just don't like you. And you know, you can definitely not like women creators or developers, but I think you really should look at the bigger picture of what's being said, how it's being said. And when you see criticism and things launched at people, who is often the target of that. And I think if you dig into that report, you see a lot of that there, where women will say, it's not so much that you're really being aggressive over my performance, it's that you're giving me a level of scrutiny that you don't give my male cohorts. Like, I have to be so much better than the men around me. It's not that you're holding me to like an unreasonable standard, but I look around and that's not the standard you hold everyone else to.
Yeah.
And what's the key difference? And you have to ask yourself those questions. So like, yeah, really, I think just educating yourself, uplifting it, looking how you can be more aggressively for women. Because I do think a lot of people are like, yeah, like it'd be cool, but what do you actually do to like help support it? Like, if you're on, you know, Twitch, Patreon, wherever, like, are you actually voting with your wallet on that way? There's also a way to do that where you just support, you know, other women or other developers, or, you know, conferences or talks that have women, making sure that panels have women when they have, like, I've seen all like women's topics that don't have any women on the panels, like crazy stuff like that. I think speaking out against that. And I also think couching all hype in the context of what the studio is going through. I mean, Ubisoft is certainly also one that's under fire.
Right.
And I think about that every time we cover something with Ubisoft, where it's like, okay, all this stuff. And I see people that I love that work there that are like doing their thing, but also underneath that, there's like this big lawsuit and these big issues. And like, yeah, I mean, that's a very like long-winded answer, but those are kind of my gut reactions to seeing this and thinking of what are the next actionable steps. And yeah, just really being vocal, you know, just like being an ally, looking up and trying to do those things, and just start checking those boxes in as any way that you can with the bandwidth that you have.
There we
Well
go.
said.
Thanks, Nickel. Question of the week. I know it's a hard pivot back to silly questions.
I feel like the childlike wonder. It was the first question.
like
I don't know if that's
I know, I'm with you. I like the childlike wonder too. Maybe it's just the phrasing. How are you guys feeling
Well, it's
about
also
that?
nice to think of like, when was the last time I was like really just instantly excited about something, which was a
Maybe it
fun
was
little
good
rabbit
vibes.
hole to dive into.
Yeah. All right, there we go. Cade Mead, congratulations. You won Watam on PlayStation from I Am 8-Bit from their wonderful online store. Thanks to I Am 8-Bit for shipping that stuff out. Now it's time for something we'd like to call Get a Load of This. And Get a Load of This goes a little something like this. I got a quick one. Hey, get a load of this, everybody. This is maybe some basic internet stuff, but I was streaming the other day and I was closing tabs on a stream, and Johnny Moto in the chat said, Hanson, what's wrong with you? What are you doing? And I said, whatever do you mean, Johnny Moto? And they explained that I'm closing tabs like a goober, because apparently you can close tabs by clicking the middle mouse wheel, the scroll wheel, anywhere on the tab to close it, which I've been doing for a while now to open them, but to close tabs, I always go to the little X. But it turns out you can close them again just by clicking that middle wheel. Leo, you're doing it right now.
I had no idea. I thought you were going to say the tab, like at least on Chrome, when you right click and you can do close tabs to the right.
Yeah.
I also just noticed that was a thing. I had no idea about the wheel.
Oh, yeah, the wheel. Also, apparently, Control Shift T to reopen a tab that you closed accidentally. Also a pro tab tip for everybody out there. I think this is game changing.
So I do feel old. This is also back to the old question. I feel.
Yep, we're all aging. Thank you, Johnny Moto. Janet, you got one?
Yeah, get a load of this. It's sort of swinging back to our conversation with EA Play, but during the pre-show, which was like 15 minutes, very, very reasonable pre-show, they had Japanese breakfast featured for the Sims Cottage Living expansion pack, where they like did one of their songs in Simlish, which is cool. And also, I do want to also give an additional shout out to the fact that Japanese Breakfast, like the band Japanese Breakfast, the group, they have been in a lot of like gaming stuff, because they were also at Keely's Summer.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Question mark. That's what it's called, where they did the stuff with Sable, I believe it was, and I guess they're like doing composition for that. So I just think it's cool to see like a band sort of have this, I don't know, little like gaming touchstone within their repertoire of content.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, the classic duel between Kyle and Leo. Who's got the first get a load of this? Hey, first one to jump in the arena. Oh,
I was going to say mine's not timely at all. It's super random. It's just something funny that I wrote down in my notes.
Leo, you can still jump in. He's rambling. Jump in, Leo.
Mine is Kyle's.
There we go. All right, here, I'll just go. This is like an old article. It's from like 2016. I saw the quote first, which made me go track it down to see if it was true. But it's from the Vulture, and they were just asking a bunch of celebrities about the Batman versus Superman movie that was getting ready to come out at the time.
Okay.
And they just asked a bunch of celebrities who would win in the fight, Batman versus Superman, right?
Okay.
And it's like people like they talked to Sebastian Stan and Tom Hiddleston and Zachary Levi and just like a bunch of random people, and they're all like, I like Batman. Batman's great. I hope he wins. I like Superman. Superman's great. I like him. But the one that I just thought was so funny was Michael Shannon, who appeared in Man of Steel as the villain.
Zod, yeah.
His quote that he gave back to them when they asked him, hey, we're doing this fun piece. Who would win in a fight, Batman or Superman? He said, I am so utterly unconcerned with the outcome of that fight. So profoundly, utterly unconcerned. I can't even come up with a fake answer. I guess I have to root for Superman because he killed me. So I would hope that he would continue his killing spree and become like a serial killer Superman. That's a new take on Superman. We'd all be in a heap of trouble if Superman was a serial killer. He could just wipe us all out, but then he'd be lonely. And that was Michael Shannon's response to who would win the fight, Batman or Superman.
That's beautiful. Love it. There's links below for all this fun stuff. All right, Leo, you've built it up. Oh, hang on, though. There's one from the community. Shazira posted a link to, apparently, this is in the Discord, 2K soft launches an unannounced XCOM Legends mobile game, which I think I pay attention to video game headlines. This completely went by me. But apparently there is a XCOM mobile game that's been soft launched in certain territories, and people just like stumbled across it. Like somebody spotted it last year, apparently, by just seeing an ad on Facebook. Like 2K has just like not acknowledged that this turn-based RPG like XCOM experience is available on mobile now. But
wait, so Hanson, you totally missed the Kotaku headline debacle around this game?
Yeah, I guess so. What was that?
The headline that Kotaku wrote, and guys, maybe Janet, maybe you know what I'm talking about, was something along the lines of like XCOM game secretly launched. XCOM mobile game secretly launched. Looks like was like.
Oh, that's what that was about. I just saw people being sarcastic about it on social media in a very toxic way. I didn't know what the core of it was about.
Well, no, but then the debate became like, is that a fair headline?
Right.
Which is an interesting debate, I think.
So the next hour of the podcast.
Yeah, what a mess. All right, no, I missed that one, but if you missed it as well, there's a weird XCOM game lurking around there.
It is bizarre how it just got dropped, right? Like seems like a cool idea, XCOM on mobile.
It's just, it feels like so many publishers are just like making these mobile spin-off versions, like, I don't know, throw it out there. Let's roll the dice. Maybe this will make some money. Okay, what's that? It's dead? Okay, moving on. Like, Ubisoft just shut down its Tom Clancy Elite Squad game, which was the big return to form for Sam Fisher and all of our other friends. All right, Leo, will you stop teasing us?
Hey, guys.
Hey.
Get a load of this.
He's doing it.
Not a very flashy one this week, but hopefully it's helpful.
Okay.
Someone gets something out of it. The Pomodoro technique is something Janet knows.
Yeah, hell yeah. Hell yeah. Them Pomodoros. Let's go.
Hell yeah. It's a very simple workplace, focus technique that I've been doing the past month or two. Essentially, it's 25 minutes of work, 5 minutes off. And you do that 3 or 4 times, and then you get a longer 15-minute break. And I was just manually putting in the timer on my phone. And I find it to be very helpful to have that kind of structure in my day. But in the past couple of weeks, I found this site called pomofocus.io. pomofocus.io. And it is those timers, built in. It automatically takes you between 25 minutes to the 5-minute timer, automatically deploys the 15-minute timer after so many sessions. And you can write down tasks and have different projects. And it builds a graph of how much time you've spent each day of the week on each different project. I found it to be really helpful for me being, self-employed, self-motivating, like building that kind of routine.
Yeah.
And I really recommend it.
That's cool. That sounds great. All right. Plugs. What do we got? We're recording the commentary track for Lord of the Rings 2 Towers tonight. That'll be in the Patreon exclusive podcast feed, which you can unlock in your favorite podcast app by supporting us over there on Patreon. So look forward to that. Probably going up very soon. We have the Fellowship of the Ring up there now. Let's see, we have the deepest dive on Dead Space. Go back, play that original game. You can join our huge game club discussion or just watch it on YouTube if you'd like. That'll be up early next week. You can unlock the podcast version as well on Patreon. MinnMax Council, our big call-in episode. The last Sunday of every month, we do the call-in episode of MinnMax Council. This Sunday at 7 p.m. Central, we're going to have that call-in episode. So if you're at that $20 tier, if you just want to jump in at that $20 tier, you can jump in and talk to Suriel and myself, and we'll be recording it from the new MinnMax studio, which will be unveiled on Friday on Twitch. So give us a follow at twitch.tv/MinnMaxShow. Suriel is going to be swinging by the new studio in person. We're going to be streaming some old games. I'm going to surprise him with an old game that he talked about a long time ago on this podcast. And I don't think he knows that I have it. So get ready for that. But yeah, if you want to talk to us, you can call in this Sunday, or if you want to watch us stream fun old games in the new studio, you can follow MinnMax Show on Twitch. I think that's it. Anybody else have something they're dying to plug?
My new video will hopefully be out on Friday of this week on youtube.com/LeoVader. It's about time loops and it's 32 minutes long.
Wow, biggie.
Oh, wow.
Biggie.
There we go. Cool. Thanks so much, everybody. And thank you to the folks that joined the thank you crew over there on Patreon. You can add your name to the list as well at that $50 tier, but these people are good folks. Thank you for supporting us. And you know who I'm talking about. It is Hello Hyrule Podcast. I am 8-Bit, Fixture S1, Mirko Arico-Torreno, BeatenDownBrian, Zachary Pligge, Andrew Uerkwitz, Jawarhello, Mark Seliga, PrettyGoodPrinting.com, Connor McCabe, Ludwig Roque, John Higby, Best of the Rest Podcast, Andrew Vala, Logan Krause, SpiralInYourEyes, Drew, Waranis, Clint Farley, Spider Dan, Purebred number 6, Starkiller, Steve Bamdad, SlyckNic, and Preetham Yarlagadda. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you next week. Be good, have fun, let's go.